All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our March 10th, 2020 Village Board meeting. I'd like to lead off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a very full agenda this evening, so we're trying to keep things moving as fast as possible. I just want to lead off with our star presentation right here, which is this. If anybody doesn't know what this is, these are the pipes we're removing from our water distribution upgrade. I'm not going to lift it, I'm not going to pass it around, but if you're still here after the meeting, please come up and take a look at it. This actually came from Livingston Street, so these are an example of what we're replacing and why we're replacing it. Because as you can see, if you look through this, the flow has been very much restricted. And also it's too small for today's standard for fire and service. So having that, I'd like to go right into our meeting. Our county legislator had a conflict at the last minute, is not able to make it. So what I'm going to jump to right away is a presentation and an update on the coronavirus, the COVID-19. Just to give everybody an update of what's going on here locally and what we're trying to do, and from the county. So we meet regularly with our county executive and their whole task force of people to discuss this very subject that's very important. And with me at those meetings is Sergeant Pete Dunn and EMS Captain Chrissy Amy. One of the things we did last night was to prepare all of our first responders so that they're ready to respond if the case is needed, for them to respond to an existing case. And what does it mean by preparation? We actually took them through a short medical evaluation and then a fit test for the N95 mask. And the N95 mask is the procedure for handling these patients. And then our EMS Captain, Chrissy Amy, is going to give you an overview of what we've been learning from the county and an update on that. So, Chrissy?
Hello, all. Okay, so basically we're just going to go into what we know about, maybe? Computers, yeah, let's start there. I don't know. We lost the signal. Let's try that again. Of course, it was working.
I think if you just tap on it.
No, it's
Hang on.
we have to get a connection here. Oh, there's
Hit the home. Do you have the home button?
nope, it's right there.
Never fails.
I know. Ah!
It works all the time until you're ready to use it.
Okay, so what do we currently know? So COVID-19 is it is a new strain of the coronavirus. It was first found in China back in 2019, December of 2019, hence its name. The information for COVID-19 is rapidly developing. We're learning stuff new every day about it. It is a respiratory disease, so it is transmitted through airborne exposures. Some of the symptoms include sore throat, a cough, shortness of breath, pneumonia, those types of things. So it does have some similar symptoms to flu or even your common cold, but the big component of it is the respiratory compromise that some patients are experiencing. So because it is airborne, it does move from person to person through respiratory droplets, so coughing and sneezing. If you cough into your hands, you touch a surface, and the next person comes along, touches a surface. Those things can all cause some transmission. We also know that the transmission has been through travel. and community-based. And what that basically means is that there are people who are coming down with it as a result of traveling, and then there are people who are coming down with it as a result of just living in their communities with other people who may have gotten it through the travel. So you don't need to just travel to get it at this point. So who is infected as of today? And this is developing every day. We are now at 173 cases. I think yesterday at this time we were like 142, 143.
105 yesterday,
Okay.
142 this morning.
Yeah, so we're at 173 right now. And actually New York State is now the highest state with the most cases. And while some people, that's alarming to you, it's still relatively low. So they are still really trying to emphasize that our immediate risk still remains low, but it's definitely something they want us to all be aware of and watching. So with the closest case to us just being one in Ulster County, I'm sure all of you are following the news. I don't need to read off to you where they are, but the one in Ulster County did come in contact with several Dutchess County residents. Those residents have all been contacted, so they are now in what they're considering like a person under investigation. So that person is now being monitored. All those people who are from Dutchess County are now being monitored by our local Department of Health. And when I say monitoring, what does that mean? They are getting frequent calls from the Department of Health. They're being monitored for any symptoms that may develop. And at this point, I don't believe any of the people from Dutchess County who had the exposure are experiencing any symptoms. So that was as of this morning. So people are also questioning the recent declare of our governor to declare a state of emergency. And so to some people, a state of emergency just means a lot of different things. And what it means in this instance is that it allows our state to have expedited services that we need to help us combat this illness and also provide us with our protection. So as EMS provider, we are also experiencing shortage in supplies, shortage in personal protective equipment, shortage in cleaning products. Anybody who's just recently gone to their local stores, Walmart, Target, you are noticing that a lot of the shelves are bare. And that's just a result of people just flocking to buy things they just think they're going to run out. So it allows the expedition of getting all of those things that we need to just move this process along. So it's a great thing. So what are the things that Dutchess County is currently doing to prepare? Dutchess County government has initiated their response plan for the virus, and this response plan is very similar to other response plans that they have initiated in the past for other illnesses. So the one that comes to mind to me is Ebola. So they're using very similar plans. It just becomes an activation of that plan. It brings in more resources. The county government starts to getting involved, the conference calls start happening, and people start coming together to plan and prepare. It also creates a coordinated effort with all, I guess you can call it, entities that are involved, all the branches that have a stake in the preparation process. So it also brings all of us together. And then they're also coordinating with schools and hospitals to make sure that they are all in line and what they need to do to also prepare. The county has activated a web page. It's listed here. And we also have a countywide coronavirus information line. So that is a designated line for coronavirus. It's right there. Next is, what are we doing in our very own community? And actually, it's been a lot. A lot of our time over the last couple of weeks has been dedicated to this process. As Mayor Bassett alluded to, him, myself, and Sergeant Dunn, we've been participating on conference calls. I know with my squad and this department, our fire department, we have been doing a lot of training, a lot of refreshing on things that we typically maybe not see in an emergency basis. So we're just making sure that all of our first responders are up to date and what they need to know to effectively prepare. These conference calls that we do also provide us with the most up-to-date information and accurate information. As we all know, the media can tend to hype things up, so it's nice to get precise and accurate information so we can pass that along to you. And hospitals and skilled nursing facilities, we all know we have several here right in our own community. And our schools have also been preparing should the virus make its way here. And I don't know if Mayor Vassa alluded to, but just a reminder that we do not have any confirmed cases in Dutchess County at this time. We have people being monitored, but we have no confirmed cases. Who's at risk? So the short answer is obviously we all are. You know, there's the potential that everyone in this room is at risk, our families. However, the more thought out and precise answer to that is there are certain groups that this is kind of really, I won't use the word target, but it has more of an effect on. And with that is individuals who have recently traveled to the 5 countries that this is predominantly in. And those are Japan, China, Iran, Italy, and South Korea. As anybody read the news, but Italy's like shut down. People who have been in close contact or proximity to where cases are. So New Rochelle is a big one in the news today. So if you work in New Rochelle, obviously you're at a greater risk than somebody who may work at Tops. And of course, our vulnerable population. This, for whatever reason, really is hitting our elderly population more, whether that's because they have immune systems that are compromised, underlying health conditions. They're just not able to fight off viruses as, you know, a healthy middle-aged person or a young kid can do. So what we can do for them also is we really want to just help our elderly know their effects and what can happen if they're doing unnecessary travel. So we just like to remind everybody not to make an alarm or, you know, or to scare you, but limit the things that you're doing to stuff that's absolutely essential. You know, if you don't need to be in groups and you don't need to be walking around New Rochelle, then don't go walking around New Rochelle. And what should you do if you are concerned about symptoms you may be experiencing, or if you believe that you've come in contact? And there's been a lot of talk about what is appropriate to do. And at this point, we really want to minimize the need for our healthcare system. And that just is because we don't want it to be compromised any more than it necessarily has to be. So what the CDC is really coming out and advising is as well as our local health department, is that the first primary point of contact to get any information to address your concerns is to call your own physician. In the absence of having a primary care physician, of course, you want to go on to the next step, but make that phone call to your primary care physician. Our local Department of Health has put out memos to all of the physicians in the area, advising them of the steps that they are broadcasting and wanting people to take, so they know that they are the first point of contact and they should really do their best to assist you with your needs without putting you into the healthcare system, such as the 911 system or hospitals or urgent cares. If that fails, then obviously, then the next step that they're advising is to contact the local health department. And then if that all fails, then obviously go to your, contact your nearest emergency room or urgent care facility. We also want to stress that if you feel that you are in imminent need of medical attention or you are in any sort of distress, absolutely contact 911. We do not want anybody who is home having this distress or having shortness of breath or in imminent need of medical facility taking the time to follow steps A, B, and C before you're getting the medical care that you may need. So absolutely, if anybody is experiencing them, 911 is definitely appropriate at that time. And then again, we just want to remind everybody, what can you do to help protect? And obviously the number one and most important thing is people just need to wash their hands frequently and with soap and water. So while people are flocking to buy hand sanitizer, we really want to stress that soap and water is the primary and most effective resource for you to cleanse your hands. In the event that you do not have soap or water, obviously hand sanitizer will do. Cough or sneeze into your sleeve or your elbow or a tissue and then discard of it, then wash your hands. Avoid contact with people who are sick or stay home when you are sick. It's really important. Touching your face, it actually was a pretty alarming statistic that I just learned about when putting all of this together, is that the average human touches their face 40 times a minute. Like, I was like, that's scary. So, you know, without even realizing it, we're constantly touching our faces. And then clean and disinfect things frequently. So I think that is our biggest resources that we can take away from this to try to keep us all healthy. And at this point, I would just ask if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, I'm done. Oh.
So if you feel that you have some symptoms,
Okay.
something like that, you call your doctor.
Mhm.
You don't go to the emergency room.
Do not go to the emergency room.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he will instruct you as what.
Correct. Correct.
He may call you in, your name, whatever.
Correct. Yep.
They wouldn't ever come to your house, I know that.
You know, but
I lived in Europe with
the reason that they're really pushing for the point of contact for physicians is because your own primary care physician is really going to be familiar with your needs. They're going to know your history. They're going to know, you as a person, as a patient. So they're going to be able to better assist you. So what they choose to do, obviously, I have no idea, but we want the point of contact to start with a phone so you're not clogging the healthcare system or infecting anybody who doesn't need to be infected. They may be able to just talk you through it because a lot of the patients who have come down with COVID-19 are really just getting over it on their own, no different than if you had the flu or a common cold at home. Not many people are really needing, pretty intensive medical treatment. Yes?
Does the village have enough tests?
Okay, so tests have been a big thing. And we had the honor of having Dr. Sabia, who is the medical director out of Northern Dutchess Hospital, with us last night for our training. And one of the things that he is stressing is that they are going through multiple steps to test patients who are experiencing symptoms for other things first. So if I walk in and I'm like, I have a cough and I have a fever, they're not immediately going to test me. No. So they're going to want to weigh out other things that could be wrong with you first because they don't want to just waste the test on, and you have to have other underlying circumstances. If I say I haven't left Rhinebeck in 4 weeks, well, then the exposure is very different than if I say, yeah, I was just working at a, boutique in New Rochelle. So there really is, I'm picking on New Rochelle today. So there really has to be other aligning factors for them to test you too. But testing kits are available and they are being used, but even the hospitals have to get permission from Department of Health to even test individuals. So there's certain criteria that you have to meet to even be given a test at hospitals.
And today the county told us that they had enough available test kits to
Right.
meet the immediate demand.
Right.
And we do know that commercial manufacturing of test kits is now ramping up quickly, and more tests will become available in the near future. One thing I would emphasize, though, is more test kits become available, I think you're going to see the number of cases rise. So don't be alarmed if the number of cases go from 173 to some other number. It's because we're going to be doing, the county, the state, the local hospitals, more test kits are going to be available to test people who are now being monitored for the 14-day.
I'm not from your area, but just curious.
You're not from New Rochelle, are you? No.
I'm mayor of New Rochelle.
Oh, good.
Just curious, have they made any predictions what this is going to look like a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now?
They really haven't. I mean, I think right now it's kind of all opinion-based. I don't think there's any kind of factual information out there. So there are people that are like, it's going to slow down. And then there are people who are like, it hasn't met its peak yet. So I really think that I don't think there's any kind of concrete idea.
This doesn't even come close to the impact that the normal flu season has.
No, but right. No, not even close. You're absolutely
So
right. Right.
Are they predicting something catastrophic down the road?
I don't know. I don't know where they're going with it. And like I said, I think it's all kind of opinion-based right now. I think that we don't know enough information.
So I want to interject
Yeah, go
here.
ahead.
So what we've been told, you're going to hear me say 2 words. The first word is basically what we're going to talk about is containment. Step 1 is about how do we contain people who have been exposed, are potentially been exposed, are just potentially at risk. Phase 1 is all about working to contain those. That's why you hear a lot about isolation and putting people in home isolation or mandatory isolation, because if you talk about containment, you're trying to reduce the spread of the virus, which is very key. Number two, the next phase is called mitigation. Once you get beyond the point where there's enough cases, you have to go to where you're going to start mitigation, and mitigation is to lower that number of cases. So today we are still in Dutchess County talking about containment and not mitigation, because we can still handle the number of cases and try to reduce that spread.
Anyone else? Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, President.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay, we're going to get moving right along. Next, I know some people that are here haven't had dinner yet. So I'm going to jump right into a public comment section so that our guests or anybody else who wants public comment can actually get back to dinner. So is there a public comment? If you are, please come up, introduce yourself, and tell us what you want to talk about.
Mr. Schaefer. My name is Paul Schaefer. I live at 8 Crowell Avenue here in the village of Rhinebeck. This is going to sound rather petty after we're talking about life and death situations, I'm afraid. But it has been a problem that has bothered me ever since I moved here 4 years ago from the town of Clinton. We bought our house because it had a wonderful view of Crystal Lake. We paid extra money for it for that reason, because it's quite a small house, because we were downsizing. We were on a farm in Clinton with an old farmhouse. It got to be too much for us. Plus, it's nice to be 5 minutes from the hospital and 5 minutes from shopping when you're in your 80s. So at any rate, I didn't realize we had this problem when I came there, but I soon discovered that we have a plague on Crystal Lake, and it's geese. Geese that come in quantities of anywhere from 50 to 200, depending upon the time of year, the time of day. It's hard to plot any cycle. They land in the lake. They come into the lawns all around the lake. They defecate constantly. It's like it's all they ever do. And if you leave them overnight along the shore, just one night will leave a carpet completely covering the grass where they sit for the night. Tonight, I discovered after I walked in the house that I had 2 lumps of goose manure on the carpet after I came in the house, and I had no idea that I'd gotten near it. The problem, I think, originated, I read some of this in Smithsonian Magazine. John Swanwick, who's going to speak next, also has run into some of this information there. And I talked to the wildlife manager for the Dutchess, or for the Department of Environmental Conservation for New York State. And there are 2 kinds of geese. There are geese that still migrate, like they did when I was a kid, and I would watch them go over and go south in the spring and go north in the fall. And then there are what they call resident geese, which are actually an invasive species. About 30 or 40 years ago, somebody decided the goose population in the east was declining. And so they brought geese from the west coast. And these geese have no migratory instinct. And so they became our resident geese. And that's the problem. Now, I know that there's no perfect solution to this. I have tried all kinds of things. I chase them almost daily. We put up a fence. I spent $300 on a wire fence that I bought from a company in Minnesota that said it guaranteed that they would never get through. Well, they got through. There was one very smart gander who found his way in right away, and once he got in, the others saw that they could get in, and they came through. And there's no perfect solution. But there is one thing that's going on that I think the village can help with, and that is the nesting. There are 2 islands in Crystal Lake, and they nest on both of those islands, and they have at least a dozen nests on each, and each nest contains probably 8 to 10 eggs. Sometimes they're less, sometimes more. And I've seen them, because I was over there last spring. And I can see one goose who nests on my side of the island, so I can see her sitting there, and the gander sits down below in the water and scouts for her. The Department of Environmental Conservation told me that we can get permits with no fee attached very easily. You do it online. I've looked online, and you can get permission to oil the eggs or to addle them. And the reason why you do this is because if you simply went over and took the eggs out of the nest or smashed them or did something like that, it would simply trigger the goose to lay more eggs. But if you addle the eggs, they will sit in them and they will not hatch. And by the time they realize that, the egg-laying season will be over. And one reason why that's important is because once those geese goslings hatch out, they can't fly. So those geese are there for the summer with all the goslings. They'll never leave. And that's how they've been. At least sometimes we have an occasional day when, after the season is over, they fly away for a day. Not many days, but occasionally. So I can get a permit. If the islands were my land, and I was still in the town of Clinton, I could go out there and, with this permit, and do the job. There's a video online about how to do it. It only takes 2 people, one to hold off the goose, the other to boil the eggs. And they're aggressive, but they're not that aggressive. All you need is a broom or some other long-handled instrument to hold out to keep them away while the other person works on the eggs. But because this is not my land, I can't do it. So what I'm asking is that the village look into this to see if there's finding some way that this can be done. I think John has some ideas about who might be interested in doing it. But again, maybe it's something that the town has to do because of liability. I don't know.
Hi, I'm John Swanwick. I live 2 doors down from Paul. I've lived at 11 Rockefeller for 24 years. This is the worst season I've seen of residential geese, the most. Just over the last 2 weeks, I've counted up to 40 to 60 just from my driveway every day when I'm home. Paul's right, you can easily get the permit. We would love to do it, but legally we can't because the islands are technically your property, and I'm sure the village doesn't want Paul and I out there with liability issues doing that anyway. Addling is a humane way to take care of the increased numbers. We're not asking to get rid of the geese that are currently there. We just want to stop the numbers. Just leaving my house tonight, I counted 30 piles of goose droppings in my driveway. We step in it getting out of the car. It gets tracked into the house sometimes. It carries parasites and bacteria, and they can kill fish in the pond, and I'm sure that they're doing that at the lake. I would hope that the Parks Department could maybe jump on this and help us out. That's it. I didn't touch my face, did I?
40 times.
Can I add one thing? Roger Quant, who lives next to me, who couldn't make it tonight, said that he would like to point out how much damage they do in the parks. You know, there's American Legion Park on just off Route 9, and there's a little park right next to John's house, which is part of that hunting, I guess I call it the Huntington Park, I don't know, but I think they donated the land for it. And they are not only defecating in the parks, but in the pond. And it's not healthy for people to swim in there, but they do. And so I think that's another reason. I think there's a health hazard here for people, because those geese, when you have 50 or 100, or sometimes 200, defecating all over the place, it's a problem. Thank you.
Mr. Schaefer, could I just ask you or John something? This was such a curious topic when the mayor shared it with us. I looked it up on the DEC as well, and everything that you just described is right here in this documentation. But I don't know if this sounds accurate. The documentation talks about the oiling of the eggs, but it does take several years before you might see a decrease in the population. In fact, they say maybe as many as 5 to 10 years.
So, I'd like to comment on that too,
Yeah.
because as you mentioned, they are resident geese. And because they're resident geese, when they do go away, they want to come back to where they were originally born. So we have generation after generation after generation that are coming back. So yes, we can, if the board approves or we go through this process, start reducing them, but it's going to take a period of time to have an effective result, because they all want to come home.
Yeah, I would think, though, that it would help in the short run, too, because those goslings can't fly. And if you eliminate them, you're at least not going to have another whole flock growing up that summer before it's time to leave.
Yeah, my point is
Because
you're reducing a generation.
They do eventually, in fall, maybe go away for a day or two, because once the goslings learn to fly. But they molt, for one thing, and they don't fly after they molt. And then they have the goslings there. And then we have this proliferation all summer long. So I think we would reduce the quantity somewhat, at least during the summer. People have used collies, and I fantasize getting a border collie and sending them down there. It would be so much fun to see them chase them. But on our lake, it's too big. They do this over at the woods, where they have a small pond. And the collies can eliminate the geese for a while. I think they fly over just to the other place that has a pond.
They fly to Crystal Lake.
Yeah, they fly to Crystal Lake, right. But our lake is so big that the only way the collies would help is if everybody all around the lake got a collie and chased them at the same time, they might go away. But mine would just go to the other side of the lake. When I chase them, I feel guilty because I'm sending them over to my neighbors on the other side of the lake. Or I send them upstream. And I have seen them cross South Parsonage and go over to the park that's on the corner of the park there where it goes to the high school. And crossing the street, cars have to stop. This is not all the time, but during the summer I've seen this several times.
I have another question. You say the nests are on the islands.
Yes.
Have you noticed any other shore-based?
No.
So this seems to be the locus of the
When I first
problem.
moved there, I looked for that. I thought, well, maybe they would nest in the area. There's a park area on Rockefeller Lane. Before you get to over Legion Park, there's a small area where you can walk to the dam. And I thought maybe they might have nested around there, but I found nothing. And it was later that somebody told me they were on the islands, and that makes great sense because they have no predators.
Right.
Thank you, Paul.
I think raccoon.
Okay, any other public comment? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Karen Travelli. I live over at Wells Manor, and I'm here representing that community, which is primarily senior citizens and handicapped individuals. I know what's going on now with the changes in parking, for handicapped parking, and of course, we're very concerned. We don't want to lose any handicapped parking, nor do we want to be inconvenienced while there are major changes taking place. It concerns us. So I was hoping that that could be clarified tonight, and we could learn more about what we will experience in the near future concerning handicap parking.
It's on the agenda.
Karen doesn't need anyone to speak for her, but as I think the board knows, as liaison for wastewater, excuse me, Brian Bacamo and I have spent a lot of time with the folks from Wells Manor. Karen has been the driving force behind all of those meetings, along with Nancy and Regina, and I'm glad to see them all here. And Karen and these folks know how I feel. I feel really badly. I'm just speaking for John Rossi, just this trustee. I do feel that greater consideration should have been given for the needs of the handicapped when the transition took place from the EV, from the handicapped and the EV stations were implemented. It is on the agenda as the mayor has suggested, as it indicated. I'm wondering if the board would consider, just as a courtesy to these folks, if we could elevate it from the bottom of the agenda, this topic, to the top of the agenda. And we have Brandy Nelson here, of course, and we just address it much sooner.
Let's get through the public comment and we'll address that. Any other public comment? Yes, please.
Do I have to do that?
Yes, please.
I do, okay. I was trying to avoid that. My name is Judith Garden, and I live on Livingston Street. And I'm talking for a number of people who live on that street, and it's really, really trying to get down that street. Not only is the dust unbelievable on our block, but the mounds and the bumps and the lumps, and my neighbor across the street ended up with breaking the spring in his car. I'm worried about my own car. I'm washing the car every other day. It's a problem, and I appreciate the work that you guys did. I really do. You've been very kind and helpful, but I had no idea, or we didn't have any idea, that this was not going to look this way up until when they're going to fix that road and all the other roads. I'm just speaking for Livingston Street. And I wonder if you could address that. Is there some way that that can be flattened out, the pebbles removed? I have photographs in case anybody wants to see what it looks like, or even drive down that street. The other problem is that there's one side of the street that's fine. I shouldn't say fine, but it's better than the other side. And everyone is using that so that cars are coming facing each other, because it's no longer a two-way street. That's a problem too.
So,
Thank you.
if you can stick around, we're going to discuss this in great detail in the
Great.
committee tonight.
Good.
Yes,
Something positive about to say about it?
we're going to have a discussion about it tonight.
Okay, discussion. All right, I'll take that.
Yes, please, because we're in the public comment section.
Yeah, and I'm just going to follow on. I'm representing the other end of Livingston Street, although I live on Donald Warner on Beach, at the intersection, I might say, of Livingston and Beach. So I do wrote up some comments. I'm happy to pass them out. I do want to thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I do appreciate that this is a challenging time for everybody in the village. There is a great deal going on, and I too feel kind of reluctant to speak about particular issues here, but I will. And I'm speaking as a resident of the north side of the village. I feel very dispirited personally by a lot of things, but by several conditions, among them the road conditions, the cumulative stress from days and weeks of heavy construction, the dirt and damage left behind, and what appears to be failing storm drains. It seems that far more work was done or needed, certainly there's probably a lot of work needed, that we may not have understood or didn't understand from the briefings. I would also add to that the degrading condition of many trees and sidewalks. My neighbor just fell and sprained her wrist, and that kind of thing is going on. We couldn't walk to dinner the other night for fear of having to walk back. It was a lovely night. You couldn't walk back down Livingston Street safely. On top of that, of course, and this is not in your purview, our property assessments came out, and we're going to see a likely shift of the tax burden in Rhinebeck disproportionately to the north side of the village, and to the village and then to the north side, and particularly, I think, in the historic district. And this impacts many older enhanced star residents. So these are kind of the conditions we're living in right now of the moment. It would be very helpful, I think what we would ask the board to do is to provide, maybe you're going to do it, provide more information on the status of the construction project and what's going to happen next, and also your guiding priorities for the future. So if you could please update, and maybe this is what you're doing, update residents in the construction area on current status and plans to clean up, restore, and repave in some kind of information session or other communication that's made widely available to the residents all over the north side. To be specific, will there be detailed direction given to the contractor on cleanup and repairs needed, not only on the 3 streets but also the intersections? There have been loose coal, given that there's a lot of loose coal patch, stones, dirt, and sludge, it's being discharged down our storm drains. And so I'm concerned, I don't know, what repairs may be needed to make sure that our drains are properly functioning. And can we assume that all the roads, meaning at least Livingston, Chestnut, Platt, and the intersections, like on Beach and North Parsonage, have also been torn up and big holes dug. So they're not actually in great condition either. So can we assume that the roads will be repaved? I believe you have a or a different contractor that's doing that. So will they grind and pave the entire road? And what is the cost to complete? And are we as villagers are going to be financing it, or how will that be financed if it's greater than what was originally planned? So that's question number 1, sorry. The second question is, it concerns, logically, the budget development and priorities for next year and beyond. So you have 3 budget workshops coming up shortly, and I believe the public hearing on the whole budget will be April 14th. So can you clarify, we should know by now, but clarify what information will be made public. So first, do you have a list of village priorities that are guiding the budget process right now, and is this list available? Copies of the proposed general budget, I believe, don't have all the terms right, but copies of the proposed general budget by line item compared with the current year, would that be available, and when? And in terms of the workshops, whatever documents you're reviewing in the workshops, are they available to the public online or in hard copy version? So that if the public attends the meetings, will they have the information? That's it, thank you.
Okay. I can briefly address the budget issue for you.
Thank you.
So the way the budget process works is we set up a series of meetings and go through each department or group individually at a budget meeting, and that is publicized and sent out to everybody to tell them what group we're going to meet with next. I think our next meeting, it's an open meeting, and anybody is welcome to attend. And what typically happens is the trustee or a representative of that group can come in and will present their budget to the board. So we're developing priorities as we go along, as we're learning information, because this is the budget gathering portion of that information. We pull that all together, and when we're all done, we will have a comparison chart, which we always have, that goes back 3 years, that presents the budget and the changes in the budget as we're going forward. And when we get that, we will have a list of, here's our priorities, here's the things we're going to dedicate our money to, and here's the changes in the budget that we'll have. That'll be available before the public hearing, because we have to give that information out and have a public hearing on the budget. So it is evolving. We're in the gathering phase of that budget right now. And there's a lot of stuff that gets put in the budget that may or may not be there at the very end. And that's why we're going through this process. And what we would do is, as we gather it all, then it's my responsibility as the CEO of the village to take that budget, condense it down, and give it back to the board.
And we would have, if you come to the meeting for that particular department that evening, then we have hard copies for that's what we discuss off of, so. For that particular department, we would have exactly what you're saying, like we have last year's budget, year-to-date, and then a proposed for this forthcoming year.
So in those workshops, is that material available to the public? I mean, that's on, sometimes.
It's available at the meeting
At
time,
the
not
meeting,
ahead of time.
yeah.
Okay.
Because
Because
these
we
groups are
scribble all
working-
over it, and, you know, we change it, so,
And it's part of the discussion.
Yeah.
And it changes while we're at the meeting.
It's
So-
just that sometimes if you attend a workshop, we may be sitting here as an audience, but don't see what you're looking at.
Oh, we'll give you a hard copy of what we're
Yeah.
discussing. So you would see what we're discussing. It's just not available ahead of time. Okay? Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
It's gotten up like 5 times.
Hi, my name is Robert Cunningham. I just moved to Rhinebeck about a year ago, and I needed spinal surgery because I had a pinched nerve in my spine, and they took out disc, diffusion, you know, whatever. Well, I'm still in recovery, but I had to start with a rollator and then go to a walker and then go to a cane. And then fortunately, I'm cautiously walking, but I find the sidewalks that I walked in Rhinebeck horrendous, absolutely horrendous, and extremely dangerous, not only for me, but for anybody, any kid, any adult, any visitor. I don't want to make any threats or anything like that, but it's a loss that you're waiting to happen. It really is. And I would really concentrate on getting the sidewalk straightened out. And my rehab was hindered by not being able to use East Market Street, you know, going east and stuff like that, because, you know, between what this lady said, the tree trunks coming up and there being, you know, I don't think I need to say any more because I think you just know what I'm talking about. Okay?
Sir, I would like to thank you for that, because for the past 2+ years, we have been actively working to get homeowners to repair their sidewalks and working with them. The sidewalk is the responsibility of the homeowner, and it has been, in a lot of cases, neglected because it hasn't been enforced. So as much as we're sympathetic to all of our residents, because this is an expense, we have been trying to work with our residences to get their sidewalks repaired, and the ones that are especially damaging, you know, to be more progressive at fixing them. I am in sympathy with you as well. My wife just went through spinal surgery and has gone through the same thing you went through, and I know what you're doing, and I know how it is. So we've been working on this and working with our homeowners to try to do this, and that's really where we're going, because our goal is to make the village of Rhinebeck a walkable community, and that's where we need to be.
Especially with weekend visitors, but just for the residents
thank you.
themselves. You're very welcome.
And just to give you a number on it, homeowners have fixed over 50 sidewalks now in the last 2 years. And you're going to see them in segments because they're in front of homes, and it's not the whole sidewalk. But we are actively working with our residences to work with them on that issue.
Is there any way that it can be more vigorously enforced or
Yes, we
fined
can.
or whatever?
Yeah, we
I don't know
can
what the
turn up,
options are.
we can turn up the volume, so to speak, at any time. And some of our residences have gotten multiple notices. You know, so we're working, that's a work in progress.
And just the last question, if there were to be a lawsuit because somebody gets hurt, is it the homeowner's lawsuit or is it Rhinebeck's lawsuit?
So typically what happens, and we do get sued for sidewalks, be very clear. But it goes to the homeowner, but when that lawsuit comes in, they go after everybody. They go to the homeowner and then they go to the village as well. And we defend that case. And so far, we've been successful in defending all of our cases from a village point of view.
Right. Okay, thanks.
I think Trustee Lewitt.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just going to echo, rather to reiterate what Gary said. I think you will notice we have had John Fenton in this fall, in the spring and the fall, has been out targeting various sections of town, and you will see the blooms of orange spray paint on various curbs and sidewalks, and that's an indication of a hazardous condition, and that shows that he's inspected it, the homeowner is going to get notification. I do want to say we can push people, but there is a process that we have to do, so you have to notify the homeowner, and then obviously they have to take action. If they don't take action, we have to take action. So there is a process that we have to do, and it has to be followed. But it is a real priority. I mean, when I used to stroller my kids around, my wife and I called it extreme strollering, right? You know, we're pushing it over. So we would like to see this. It's time.
But like all things don't happen like that.
Yes. If I could snap my fingers, I would, but I can't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, sir.
Paul Higgins, 5 Rockefeller. I'm not here, well, let me say this. I do support everything that Mr. Schaefer has said about the case. So hopefully you guys can take some action on that. I'm going to come back to Crystal Lake, but in a different venue or a different topic. So for some background to the people that aren't normally here, a while back, the village purchased a floating dock for Crystal Lake. I don't know what that cost. It was part of making the park accessible to the disabled, and the dock does appear to be that. Pathways are another topic, but a few months back at a meeting, the mayor mentioned that he was asked about moving the dock. The dock had been moved 45 feet from here over to here. He was asked about why the dock was moved, and he indicated it was moved because a person didn't like the way it looked, a single resident. Well, that cost $6,500 to move the dock. Your money, my money. So my question is, could you explain how can you justify a $6,500 expenditure to do that because one person whispered in your ear that they didn't like the way it looked? Thank you. I look forward to your response. Now, I hope.
I thought we addressed it at the meeting.
Pardon me?
When it was brought up. We addressed that at the last
You
meeting.
did not explain, you didn't justify that expenditure.
We had our super DPW here, who, the work was, let me address it then. Our DPW had originally pushed to move this away from the front of another village property. And we went to our legal
The
counsel.
DPW did?
Yeah, our DPW did. Let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was protruding in front of the view shed of another property, which was also why we changed the parking originally because of the original design for that park, and we shifted the parking around. So when we did that, we said we would shift the parking, shift the dock, and we were going to tilt it, just tilt it one way or the other. And our village staff was going to take care of that. So we were going to minimize the expenses. When we were putting in the dry well for the fire department, a decision was made to also have the contractor move the dock. Okay? And then we were not anticipating $6,500. When we moved the dock, we ran into rock. And it drove the cost of moving the dock up because of the exposure of the rock that we ran into. That's the fact. Unforeseen.
We did,
unforeseen, but you're moving the dock because somebody said to you, I don't
No,
like the
we were-
way. You said that 2 meetings ago and last meeting.
We were moving the dock.
Gary, come on.
I'm telling you exactly why we moved it.
Mr. Mayor, you did use the word appease. You said, you did.
You did.
Which, you want to appease.
How can you, see, this is, it begs the question of how you're spending our money. This is one instance. What else is out there? Honest to God, it makes me wonder.
We had, I can get
Okay.
into a long year, Paul, if you want to discuss it. We can
Well,
discuss it, but there was many issues associated with that location of the dock. Not only just the angle was, but accessibility by our people who were complaining about accessibility and wanted it more conveniently located. We took that into consideration, and we tried to appease the public as well as everybody to make this happen. We
Well,
were not
your
anticipating.
building guy told me, personally told me,
No,
why it was moved. And you directed it to be moved because the people that live just to the north of it,
No, sir.
it's in my view shed now. Will you move it back?
Is it on your
That's
property?
serious.
Thank you.
That's your last word on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Okay, we do have another presentation that I want to get to before we get into the meeting. And we had invited the Marist students to give an update on what we're doing on the Landsman Kill and the runoff. So this was planned, and I would like to have them come up and give us an update. Where's the other control turn it on? Where's the control? Where's the on-off switch? We need a remote control.
Chrissy, you didn't take it.
I can't just walk. I've got it. It's over by me. Hidden by this place.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm going to go off and go back on again, try to connect you. Is your computer, you're on, right?
Yeah, it's on.
Try unplugging it and plugging it back once Gary had it, because that's what I did before.
Once it's on,
Yeah, once the TV went, I unplugged it again and I,
plug it back in.
yeah, and then just.
There we go, I think it actually might work. Let's see if it works.
Once it finds it.
Maybe.
Chrissy, we keep coming up with you for some reason.
Well, it is my computer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is your computer?
Yeah.
No wonder.
Yeah.
So then you got to bring up her file, bring up your file.
It is up.
Try, let's see where the function buttons.
Maybe download it as a PowerPoint.
It's not moving.
It's not, you gotta wait till it detects your computer. It's not detecting the computer right now. There we go. Hang on.
It's not displaying the screen though.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna
it's
say,
in a,
I'm gonna download it as a PowerPoint.
Do you have it on a phone or is it just online? Is it just online?
We just downloaded it, so hopefully it'll open up from downloads, but we don't have it on the computer. Oh, here we go. Okay.
It's still not displaying. See how yours has got this MB? It's a little computer displays. They don't have that. That's usually.
There we go. All right, so hi everyone, my name is Bree, this is Emily and Thomas, and we're students from Marist College, and we're just going to update you guys on the project that we're working on, which deals with flood anticipation and mitigation in the village of Rhinebeck. So just a few things we're going to go over, just kind of introduce the project, introduce why we're doing it and why we're here, and kind of the problem that we are assessing, and the previous work that led us to the point of the project that we're at currently, as well as the current work that we are trying to implement, and as well as our future steps in the upcoming months. So just a little bit about us. We are the environmental science and policy students from Marist College, class of 2020. There are 14 of us that are separated into 3 groups in order to make this project possible. So we have the implementation team, the GIS team, and the planning group. So we represent part of our planning team, which the point of our presentation is kind of get you guys involved and educated on what exactly that we're doing, and so we can interact with each other and kind of work together on how we can best fit the community of Rhinebeck. So the problem that we have run into is an increased amount of flooding in the upper Landsman Kill area, just upstream of Crystal Lake, so specifically by Asher Dam, which is this purple X right there. And so this flooding is obviously affecting residents as well as just the overall community of Rhinebeck Village. So past analysis, our team last year, our class of 2019 environmental science students were able to develop a predictive analysis and determine based on the amount of watershed and precipitation levels and the communication with the valves, just how much this the valve system is working and the amount of flooding in the area. So based off that, our computer science team was able to develop a notification system that kind of works with the valves and the water input and output to determine the correct times when the valve should be used and open in order to decrease the amount of flooding and make it as minimal as possible. So Thomas is just going to go over our project goals and what we hope to accomplish coming in like the spring of 2020 in the next couple months.
So collectively, our teams have worked together to achieve 3 main goals. The first goal being flood prediction. Our implementation team is refining the flood prediction model and installing the water level sensor. With an active monitoring system, the village of Rhinebeck will be able to establish a detection system that will alert officials when the dam is overflowing or flood mitigation issues are occurring. Next, we have flood prevention. Our planning team is working to strengthen riparian zones. We are doing so by planting various trees and shrubs along the river, which will help absorb the surface water. And our GIS team is identifying vulnerable areas and improving maps from the previous years. We're also hoping to get public education and engagement on the issue. One of the ways we're doing this is by working with Trees for Tribs. We're having a project in May where anyone from the area can come and help us plant and strengthen the area and prevent flooding. So for flood prediction, our implementation team is measuring the discharge of water from the valves at Asher Dam. Along with this, they are determining valve discharge duration for flood mitigation, pretty much how much water is coming out of it, how much water needs to stay. And they are installing the water level detector. And along with this, they are going to alert officials on how much water needs to stay in the dam and how much water needs to be released in order to effectively mitigate flood issues.
So just to further on the objective of flood prevention, we have 2 teams working on this. We have first the GIS team, and GIS stands for Geographical Information Systems, which is basically a computer software system that helps take data and create maps. So it helps visualize the data in a really clean report. So they're working on creating maps of natural and man-made land features, and then we are able to use those maps. We'll all put them in a report at the end, and they'll be able to be used for future policy and action mitigations for flooding in the future. And then we, the planning team, we are working to repair riparian zones by planting and reinforcing them, making sure that they're taking up water like they're supposed to. We are also reaching out to the public and getting them involved. And there's also, we talk about potential street design. We're not sure if we'll have time to complete this in our project, but we have talked about it in the future. And then lastly, just to touch on this specifically, we are repairing riparian protection and getting the public involved by having this event. We got funding from DEC's Trees for Trims program, where they gave us, they're giving us about 100 plants that involve both trees and shrubs. They're very little, and we are having this event on May 2nd, 2020 at tentatively 11 a.m. So that's a Saturday, and we're going to need some help with planning. Our class is a group of 14, but we're hoping to get involvement of Rhinebeck High School students. They reached out to us and said that they would love to have some sort of collaboration with the college. So we're trying to establish a Marist College Rhinebeck High School relationship where we can collaborate in the future. So we're going to go talk to them and see if they would like to help on this date and help us plant these trees. And we are also going to talk to those homeowners near the highway department garage, and we're going to tell them what we're doing. We're hoping to get them involved. We want them to see it and understand why we're doing it so that it gets them excited and that they're realizing it's for a purpose. But yeah, so mark your calendars. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. That's also my contact information. I'm the planning team manager, but I'm also in contact with all the other teams and our advisor, Dr. Richard Feldman. If you have any questions about the project or want to help out, feel free to contact us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we had a request, and there's several people here to talk about the ADA parking in the municipal parking lot. All right, so the subject was brought up. We had an engineering evaluation done by Ty and Bond, and Brandy Nelson is here to address that.
We have so many computer challenges.
I would just like to say thank you to the mayor and the board for giving consideration and the courtesy to elevate this on the agenda.
You guys are in the wrong chair.
Did everyone receive our memo that we prepared?
It's on the
cloud. Okay.
It's up on the cloud.
It's on the cloud,
As
so
well,
it was with the agenda materials, okay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize that we didn't have an extra computer here. Always takes longer than you expect to boot up a computer. I'll get started off the top of my head. So I'm Brandy Nelson. I'm a project engineer, project manager with Ty and Bond. We're the village's engineering firm. And we were asked to just go and take a look at the EV parking space, EV stations that are in the East Market Street municipal parking lot. We took a look at those spaces. We took a look at the so many things you have to put up here. The 4 spaces that had been existing in that parking area. And what we did was we evaluated the lot based on what was there previously, so prior to the EV stations going in, compared that to what is in the standard and for handicap accessibility, and then we went ahead and looked at the existing condition, and we've suggested some modifications to the existing condition. Keep your fingers crossed. Okay, great. So first thing I wanted to just mention is that handicap accessibility is governed by a number of different regulations. So principally that's governed by the New York State Building Code under the section on accessibility. And the language for that derives from the US ADA standards, which are put out by the U.S. Access Board, which follows guidelines that are put out by the U.S. Department of Justice. So there are a set of federal standards and guidelines for handicap accessibility. What New York State has done is come and layered in on top, which states are allowed to have regulations that are at least as stringent as the federal regulations. And then in addition to that, what's a little unique in New York is that in 2014, Governor Cuomo passed some additional legislation around the type of signage that's used for handicap parking and the language that's used, replacing the word handicap with the word accessible. So New York State is a little bit unique in the Northeast as far as how handicap spaces are dealt with. The other thing that's important to understand is that when a business or a municipality has existing conditions, you're not required to go back and retrofit everything to make it accessible. But as you make improvements, you're compelled to bring them up to current code, okay? So you may see, for instance, a crosswalk somewhere that doesn't have a drop curb in it, but when the village goes to maybe do a street improvement project and that drop curb can be corrected at that time, that's the time to do it. But the municipality or a business isn't compelled to do that proactively if they don't want to. So that said, I think anytime you see improvements, we as engineers recommend, and communities we work with tend to try and make things better as they move forward. So for accessible parking, we'll skip down here. I wanted to show you guys a couple of things. Show you a map of what we're looking at. Can everyone see that? Zoom in on the area of interest. Is that better? Okay, great. So what is out there currently is 2 handicap spaces with an accessible aisle, 4 EV charging spaces, and then to replace the 2 handicap accessible spaces that were at this location, the village added 4 additional handicap accessible spaces facing towards East Market Street. Now, what was there previously was a total of 4 handicap accessible spaces. That number was less than what is required by code if it was a new parking lot that was being installed. So by relocating the spaces and adding 6, the village had the intention of coming up to code with those handicap spaces. what we evaluated out there is the fact that code does require that you have for every 3 regular parking spaces, you can only have 2 handicap spaces because you need to provide for an accessible aisle. So to mitigate these 4 spaces that are identified as ADA spaces, we need to take up 2 additional spaces and alternate a parking space with an accessible aisle, a parking space, an accessible aisle, parking space, an accessible aisle. So that's one of our recommendations, is to modify what's out there currently by providing for the accessible aisles. The other thing is that, as I had mentioned, in 2014, Governor Cuomo changed the signage. So signage out there prior to the EV stations was not up to the 2014 code. The village at that point in time is at no risk. There's a principle called safe harbor. So as long as there's no alteration being made in that parking lot, you're not required to bring the signage or the paint on the pavement up to code. However, with relocating the spaces now, that signage and painting on the parking spaces should be brought up to code. So that's another one of our recommendations, that the signage out here at the 2 existing spaces that face towards Arroy and the 4 spaces which will be expanded to take up 6 spaces and provide the accessible aisles, all get the proper signage as recommended by ADA. Other than that, I know that there's been some questions around the traveled route. So with accessibility, not only do you want to try and create a certain amount of convenience with the parking space and being able to move in and out of the vehicle, but you also want to provide a short, convenient route to whatever the destination is. Now, this is a municipal parking lot, and so presumably it could serve a number of different venues around the village. But it's not unreasonable to think that a certain number of people are going to go, down East Market Street towards Route 9 or Montgomery Street. And so what we did was we looked at the change in travel distance, and so we have got 2 different colored lines here. We have an orange line and a blue line. The orange line takes you to head in the westerly direction towards the village business district, and the teal colored line takes you in the easterly direction to head towards village and town hall. And in measuring those spaces, we also calculated for the new spaces, there's a purple line here that takes you in the westerly direction towards the village, and a green line that goes from the new spaces in an easterly direction. Looking at that, see if everybody can see that, you'll see that the orange and the teal lines were 71 feet and 94 feet, again, approximately, and the green and the purple line are 87 feet and 78 feet. So I would say roughly approximately the same. I would say, generally speaking, no impact as far as the distance of the traveled route there. So all told, after going out there and doing the assessment, the parking lot was underserved as far as the number of handicap spaces. The village relocated some spaces which have about an equivalent amount of travel distance from those parking spaces to the sidewalk. There are some signage and some pavement painting and accessible aisles that do need to be added. And I haven't talked to John Fenton this week about whether or not he's talked to the contractor about when that could be done. But I assume that could be done relatively soon.
Given the weather.
Given the weather.
I believe that John is on their schedule.
Right, okay. So we made some recommendations. We provided them to Mr. Fenton, and we provided them to the board. And we'd be happy to take any additional questions if there are any.
Brandy, at the start of the conversation, you mentioned that enforcement of this is through the Department of Justice. Was that correct?
So the enforcement of this generally starts at your building departments, at your local levels, and works its way up to Department of Justice or through legal action if there's any significant concern.
Right. I mean, if someone felt they were discriminated against or someone had cause, they don't bring it would be the Department of Justice that would investigate and enforce it.
It could be. I would say in my practice, I've never seen it go that far very quickly. Generally, what you do is you try and bring it to the attention of the local building official and see if you can get
Of
it
course.
corrected at that level first.
The Department of Justice is the enforcement arm because this is actually a civil rights law.
That's correct. This is a civil rights law as opposed to a building standard.
So we discuss spaces and access aisles and the ADA requirements, but in fact, we really are talking about dealing with people's civil rights.
Sure, yeah.
So we take this very seriously. Your report actually does use the word violation, that we have been in violation, which is very serious, and we need to get out of violation as soon as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me just be clear though. So a violation almost makes it sound like there's been some sort of ticket issued on this issue. This is not consistent with what the guidelines and standards are, and there are actions that should be taken to bring it up to the code requirements.
Right.
I have an issue with that language too, and I think it's really what you wanted to say is inconsistent with the code at this time. The question I had is there anything in the statute that says there's a timeline to complete a work in progress?
Not that I'm aware of as far as a timeline. I mean, customarily, it's that you're working towards it, that you're showing good faith in working towards it.
So it's really inconsistent right now because I understand it to be a work in progress, and certainly the village was intending to comply in every way possible, but I think it's better to say that it's inconsistent and it's a work in progress, and I noticed that that was not mentioned in the letter.
Okay.
I think that your language is correct. If I may read it out loud. The configuration of the relocated ADA accessible parking spaces is not compliant with 2010 standards because there's no access aisle and the signage is incorrect. This constitutes a violation of ADA. So I don't see any reason that that would be modified.
Well, I think the important thing is to make sure that there's a means of correcting it and that there's a condition in place. So it's been brought to the village's attention, we've looked at it, we've talked to Mr. Fenton about what actions need to be taken, and as long as there's a commitment, and this is the way I've seen it handled, both in the public sphere and in the private sphere, so you've got to be working towards remediating the issue.
If someone from the Department of Justice happened to visit the village of Rhinebeck and required a handicapped spot, they would not find an access aisle, would they?
Not at this moment, in those 4 spaces.
Presuming those two are taken, right?
There are
Well,
2 spaces that do have an
I
access
think someone visiting would probably ask, well, whether or not this is a work in progress, rather than just saying it's a violation.
Sure, and maybe that just...
I don't see any, I'd be curious to see if that's what the statute says. Brandy, you're doing measurements because I brought it to your attention. I reached out to Brandy and to John Fenton, and I said, gee, I did measurements both by Google Map, and I actually went out with a tape measure. And what I found was that what would be new spot 3 and new spot 4, right, is actually a longer distance into the entrance of the village. And I can't see your writing, but it appears that that's accurate. The purple line, the violet line is
I would say that they are generally consistent. The existing spaces and the previous spaces are generally consistent.
Does it say 71 feet for the way it was, Brandy?
71 and 94, and 78 and 87.
94 in the
In the other direction.
in the
Yeah.
eastbound
Yeah.
direction.
Going in the eastbound
Let's
direction.
let's talk about that in just a moment. What your analysis is proving is what I found, which is that the new spots not only require the individuals to cross an active throughway, an active lane of traffic, but in fact it's at least about 10 feet more.
Yeah, and I do want to be clear that there's never been a specifically designated travel way in that parking lot, nor is there a requirement for that. I mean, in new construction, what we try to do now is we try and move people from the access aisle directly to a sidewalk, but that's not the condition that exists out at this parking lot. So it is acceptable for the access, or the traveled route to go behind cars. It's not prohibited.
Haven't even gotten there yet. But what your own documentation is substantiating is that the entrance into the village center is actually a longer distance as measured by the new spots versus the existing spots. I'm not talking about going westbound, eastbound, I'm talking about eastbound into the village.
Yeah, it's 8 feet. I don't know that that would be considered significant in any sort of legal terms, but that is a question for lawyers.
It is longer. So we move the spots to a place that actually is taking individuals, perhaps in a wheelchair. 8 feet might not be much to you and I, but you're in a wheelchair or a walker, 8 feet could be a lot. The point is that it's actually not closer. These are not spots that were as well tailored to the needs of the disabled as these new located spots. Because one, you now have to drive, you have to walk through or roll through the driveway.
Which you had to do before.
No, that's not true. You didn't have to cross the driveway before.
John, I can say that I know from all the street design stuff that we look at, that it's preferred that people cross at right angles to streets. In other words, you don't want to do angle crossing. It's actually better that people walk directly in front of the driver's point.
But Rick, they didn't have to cross at all before.
But they did have to walk along the side, and it's perfectly acceptable to cross a driveway. John, you have to go on that way. We have a lot of driveways in the village. We cross the street.
Well, it's...
I mean, this is not some sort of outrageously hazardous condition.
So, Brandy, let me ask you.
It's also not consistent with what the law says, which is it says the shortest accessible route.
So when
Brandy, can I, let me
It was
ask
my idea to bring a specialist in, and that's what she did,
Yeah,
so.
so
I
let me,
mean-
I understand.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Brandy, the complaint that was brought forward by Trustee Rossi is that we created a barrier. I want to know specifically, have we created a barrier by moving the handicap parking lots to the east side?
So some of these things are mixed up in legal and engineering. So I'm going to answer from the engineering
Absolutely, that's what we want. We wanted an
I am not the
engineering evaluation.
attorney. But barriers are typically considered vertical changes in grade. And so the spaces where the new parking is located are flat spaces, similar to the other spaces. So I do not see any physical barriers. So vertical changes in grade are generally considered barriers. You know, there is an 8-foot difference. I don't see that as significant. Again, that's maybe a question that would be argued legally. With the proper pavement markings and the signage and moving in that direction, I think you can correct the deficiencies that are out there at this moment.
And has anybody at any time told you we were not intending to do that?
I have not heard that you're not intending to do that, yeah.
So our intention is to bring this up to the latest standard that you brought it to our attention to. And that with the appropriate marking and with the appropriate signage, which is what you said we need, correct?
Yes.
Right. So we are working towards getting that. And I believe you said in your memo you would ask us to get it done as quickly as possible.
That's correct.
And I believe that is also action that our DPW is taking to do. So I'm not sure what the issue is. I'd just like to also add, while we were there with you at that parking lot, unprovoked or unasked for, what did a handicapped person comment?
I don't know that I can directly quote her, but she used the spaces and was glad there were more spaces and
the location.
And asked us to move out of the way because we were standing behind her car.
I appreciate you bringing the engineering perspective, and I'm not asking you to bring the legal perspective. Sure. As far as the barrier, I presented to the board in the February meeting a specific code, a specific federal statement in the Federal Register, which I provided to you as well, which is only from July of last year, asserting that it's really not desirable to force the individuals that are disabled into a lane of traffic. So it isn't John Rossi saying it. It isn't a John Rossi complaint. I was providing very specific federal documentation.
I understand it's preferable, but not required.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
So there are instances where you simply can't rework your whole parking lot to get everybody directly into a sidewalk.
The point,
I wish you could. And the reason I needed to go out in the field that day was because I couldn't remember if there was sidewalk in front of the parking spaces over here, or if the people had to, who are using these spaces needed to get in the access aisle and then go behind cars. So I understand there's always the ideal, but there's what can you do to get as close to code as possible.
I think that most people would agree that the spaces where they were a shorter distance, even you agree with that, and probably safer because it didn't require crossing a lane of traffic. And that opinion, I don't want to speak for anybody, but that certainly is consistent with everything in the regulations and everything that I've talked about, and frankly, everything that you and I discussed when we went out on site together.
Although we did discuss the fact that the number of spaces has been insufficient, and so by making these modifications, you can actually provide more handicap accessible parking.
Yes, but with the spaces were not as, they're less desirable than where they were, for both the code and for the individuals. At least, that's certainly my view.
If we were reworking this parking lot, we might actually, if we were doing this new, we would probably put spaces here and we would put spaces here. So, when you have a large parking lot that is not serving the entrance to one building, so our office is on
Most municipal lots would
west
not.
marking. Right, so you would typically want to disperse your handicap parking spaces so that you can serve people that might be going in any direction from
Well,
that.
again,
So those are among the
and by
things
the
we
way,
talked
you and
about.
I discussed this when we were out on site, the notion that people would be walking eastbound from a handicapped spot to go to Village Hall or Town Hall. Well, we have handicapped spots right here.
I know I park over there, because there's just
But you're
more
not
parking.
handicapped, you're not disabled.
I'm not handicapped, this is true, but I just think it's hard to predict where people are gonna park. So they're gonna park where it's convenient for them.
But the disabled will park where there's disabled
Where
spots.
it's most convenient for them, and trying to provide good access, I think, is the intent of what we're doing here.
So, I wasn't here that one night. I was like you, I didn't want to do the EV charging stations in the municipal lot. But we need to remedy it, and
Yes, agreed.
we have
And I believe we
a
are.
consultant here that's telling us,
Oh,
where do you see the path forward?
First of all, I don't think we'd be having this discussion if I didn't raise it at the February meeting.
Well, that may very well be, but.
I said I'm concerned that we're not in compliance, and Brandy has provided a written report asserting that we're not in compliance. The notion that we can kind of take our time to get there, I disagree with. I don't know why we just don't establish the access aisles immediately, which is something that you and I also talked about. I also believe that the notion that the access aisles have to be painted, where does it say it has to be painted in the code? And you and I discussed this, it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, because standard practice is to paint the striping blue for handicap spaces and white for other spaces. When the weather is very cold and the ground is cold, you can't get that paint to either apply or adhere very well.
But there's nothing, but I want the board and the folks to know, there's nothing in the code that says it has to be paint. And you even described to me, well, yes, you could use thermoplastic. I said, well, you could even use tape.
But I told you that is also temperature dependent. There are other means, but temperature does play in. So, what we had talked about in the field was that you could do some signage installation. That might be one way to move forward, but so we had this conversation a week ago, and the weather has gotten very warm, and so the call was to John, hey, John, can you have the contractor evaluate whether or not they can get out there, because we're seeing construction start up very early this year, so that the village can move more quickly to a permanent solution rather than spending money and time on it.
I think my position on it is pretty well stated at this point. I appreciate that we've been able to bring it to this level. I'm convinced that without the conversation starting in February, we wouldn't be here tonight and we wouldn't be addressing these violations. That said, the reality is that the village has been in violation since this project started in mid-December, and it's now mid-March. We're still in violation, and I'm just going to continue.
John, I'm not sure where you're trying. I don't know where you're trying to drive to. We are working towards completion. Our expert analysis here has told us that we can do that, and we are trying to. And we have said all along, from day one, this is work in progress, that we needed to move forward on, and we were going to try to move forward as quickly as possible. And that's what we were trying to do. I don't know how you can fault us for trying to make things better And we are trying to improve things for the disabled. We are trying to give them more handicap access, which I think is needed in this village. That in itself is an improvement. You can't deny that, correct?
The reality...
Excuse me. You cannot deny that we are trying to add more spaces, right?
Well, I think it's questionable at best, because the reality is that we went from mid-December, you can shake your head, we had 4 ADA compliant spaces, and we now have 2 ADA compliant spaces. That's the reality. Right?
Comment?
Please.
Well, first of all, I don't know what would delay this at all. I mean, I don't know where your heads are at. A lot of people that live in Rhinebeck need accessible parking.
Correct. Absolutely.
Period.
Yes.
And compliant.
It should be a priority.
Yes.
It shouldn't be something delayed because of a technicality in the print. Why aren't you as concerned as we are? No, let me speak. I know what you're going to say. But we don't have your savvy. We go into Rhinebeck and we can't find parking. My partner, who had to leave,
Keith.
has his prosthetic leg. Everything is difficult. And that's just one example. Now, we love Rhinebeck. We shop in Rhinebeck. Why is it so difficult? And why would you take away 2 spaces now? Why didn't you do the plan, get it in place, and then put your EV stations in? I mean, why take 2 parking spots out, and then you're telling us, well, it's in the plan. We'll get there. We're working toward it. How long will that take? I mean, we're going to shop in Rhinebeck next week. Not 6 months down the line when the temperature's perfect. This I think was ill-planned, and I don't think you have any regard for the handicap.
No,
I think you do not understand what they go through.
I would like to make a comment on this. There was something said, and I'm not even going to point to the person, about the fact that people now have to walk across the driveway, and they basically said, well, what's that? They should be handicapped and find out. You're putting them at risk.
I know that from the traffic standards, that when cars are approaching people, it is preferred from a traffic point of view that a car approaches at a 90-degree angle. The real problem here is that people walk alongside the cars and behind them. That's really the greater risk. You may disagree, but...
I don't understand the situation.
Do you mean...
I have a cane, but I'm not handicapped. It's a temporary thing.
I have a question for you. Do you think it's more dangerous?
Oh, it's just a drive. They're walking, or they can walk behind cars. They can't jump out of the way if someone's pulling out, it's not looking. They can't jump out of the way if someone's roaring down that drive.
And weekends are getting almost impossible.
I think
We know you can't even cross at the lights.
I think.
You think, oh, it's okay. You just.
No, I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm telling you 2 things. First of all, the 2 things, actually, the problems that we have here, if you really want to analyze them, is that people walking behind the cars is the most difficult thing that happens in here. That's the most dangerous. I'm always concerned when I'm walking behind somebody, because somebody backs up. Sometimes people look, sometimes people don't. I'm telling you, Dave, I'm not.
All right, come on, hold it.
Get in line.
I'm going to call this meeting to order right now. If you want to speak, you can, excuse me. If you want to speak, you can come up and address the board appropriately and state your reason. But I'm not going to have an out-of-control shouting match here at our village board meeting. Plain and simple. Now, we're open to comment. We're trying to move this forward. You heard from, let me summarize. We hired somebody to tell us what we need to do. I believe it was presented in an accurate fashion of what needs to be done to improve our handicap access, because we are concerned about the disabled. We are always taking that into consideration. And excuse me, I think let me speak.
No.
There's 2 problems. There's 2 problems, and you can come up then, sir. There's two problems. One is the available of all parking, which you mentioned, over and above, right? We know that the village of Rhinebeck has a parking issue, right? Now, the second issue which we are addressing is specifically, and I want to stay on task, to the parking in the municipal parking lot and the availability of handicap parking spots. I want to stay on task of that particular item and where we are trying to go. So, Donna, you've been raising your hand. Please say your name so we can get it on a record.
Donna Warner, and I just want to say I've been coming, not for the last couple of months, but for a couple of years to board meetings, and I do think it's really important that when a new project comes up, whether it's EV stations, handicap, the dock, the lift, that there be the front end time taken in studies so that it's not, so that you're not in a situation where having to move the dock, discover after the fact asbestos in the walls, or, you know, those kinds of things. So I see that more as the issue, is to make sure that all the studies are done up front, the time is taken, and then the project unfolds.
Donna, you're right. You're absolutely right. And actually, the thing that we've done is actually bring in Ty and Bond and have them essentially on tap now, so that we did not have engineering support prior to this. Now we have, they're literally down the street. We have people we can call up and say, hi, we're planning this project, let's do it. I totally agree. Would have been much better to do it ahead of time. We'd not hired Ty and Bond by that time. It's another improvement that we're trying to make. Absolutely agree. Would have been better planned out if it was all set.
Yes, sir.
My name is Rick Tejan. So you may recall I did send you an email regarding this actual case. And so, lifelong resident, growing up here, and my son is in a wheelchair.
Yep.
And I have to say first, I'm disappointed with how the village approached this project. In the normal private sector, you would not be allowed to start a project like this and then say we're working on it till completion over a 3-month period. That would not be allowed, and that would not be a standard. In terms of access, it's a busy parking lot, and you potentially took 2 of the better spots and moved them to less desirable locations, and they're not as safe. That one road, that connect area is extremely busy, and if you ever try to maneuver somebody in a wheelchair out of a vehicle and try to wheel them through there, you would find that that is a challenging space. I would say in the meantime, if you wanted to do the right thing, until this is corrected, my recommendation would be to throw a bag over the 2 EV parking spots, move the handicap parking signs back, and restore the 2 locations, which are already painted blue, do the construction, do it right, and then make the changes back. That would be the right way to do it.
Thank you. And I thank you for your letter, by the way. And in the original design that we talked about, had the access point between the parking spaces. And that's where we were planning to get to. So I'm not going to
You can't plan and do it. You don't start a project and say, no one would start a project and then stop and say we can't paint. And the way it's signed now, it's extremely misleading and it's wrong. So the right way to do it would have been to wait for better weather, plan appropriately, and then execute your changes.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Is that something we can do, actually? Can we just
Paint?
cover the EVs and then?
Yeah, we can,
and
but I
reopen
think
the
John,
handicap?
right now, John's getting ready to paint.
Well, why don't you just do it tomorrow? Restore the other spots, because you said...
I mean, if we
you
can't
went
paint,
down,
like,
paint for a while.
in the next few days.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Mr. Tejan's recommendation.
There's still some more comments, John. Please hold. There was a hand raised.
I apologize.
Hi, Susanna Bernstein. I have a quick question, just kind of building on what Rick was talking about. I mean, it's not just dangerous for people who have various disabilities across that. If you go there during the farmer's market, the traffic is insane, right? Is there, I don't know if there's any way you can put a stop sign like before the end of the road there, so people will have to slow down in order to give people time to cross. It's a very busy parking lot. I walk all the time in the village, and people come out of there really fast sometimes. Is there any way to put new signage in, or is that like some sort of
Yeah,
state.
because I don't know the answer.
So we did, when we met in the field, we did talk about providing some additional signage. We also looked at possibly striping a crosswalk across the driveway. So the short answer is yes, we could add additional signage. Yes, we can add additional striping to indicate a crosswalk or a walking aisle. There's almost a walking aisle that goes through in these existing spaces right here, right, on both sides of the parking lot. So yes, you can do all those things. The issue in parking lots is always that it's private property, and so it's not enforced. It's not enforced the way it is in the roadway. So you're really relying on the driver to follow the cues they're used to following and obey the signage. But I don't think it's a bad idea to add some additional signage, and we had discussed that in the field.
Well, before I return to my motion, unless there's another comment, why didn't we just put 2 EV charging stations there? Why was it so important to put 4? If we had just put 2 EV charging stations, we would have increased, which was desirable, the number of EV stations, and we would have had the 4 compliant spots. We wouldn't even be having this discussion. Why was it so important to put in 4?
We'd be looking for 2 other spots. Because we would have had to put
So
2
wouldn't we
other spots
rather
in
look
there.
for
So
2
this-
other spots for EV charges than for the disabled?
No, what I'm saying is we would have had to add the 6. Don't remember, we couldn't have kept the 4. We would have had to add, by that time we're changing, we would have had to add the 6 to bring it up to code. So we need
No.
6 spots.
I'm talking about the EV charging. Why did we have to have 4 EV charging? Why didn't we just put in 2?
If I may just say to Rick's point, if you go and alter the parking lot, you trigger that alteration component, you do need to add the 2 additional spaces.
So that would have been a good thing. That would have been a good thing. We would have had the 4 compliant that we had, and we would not have removed those. And we would have brought in 2 more.
I think this is all a great discussion. I think we got some great input.
Oh, it's a very important discussion.
And I appreciate your input.
But now I'd like to make my motion, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Can I finish, please? I'd just like to finish my comment. Again, what I would like to do is just find out what schedule we were on to get this completed. And then and if it's not, let's make a motion to say if it's not going to be done within a week, I would like to accept your motion that we do something temporarily till we get it done. But I would like to at least address the issue to see if we're going to, on where our DPW is. We couldn't make it tonight, to see where he is on getting that completed.
Well, I had started the motion. Could I continue my motion and see if it's accepted or not? My motion is that we accept Mr. Tejan's recommendation that effective immediately, we disable, sorry, wrong term, but we return the two of the EV spots to ADA spots, ADA compliant spots, until we can properly construct the spots. I'd like to do it immediately. That's my motion.
The board has to discuss. I made a motion.
I'll
to
second
give
the
it a-
motion just for a
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, so I made a motion.
Well, I
You're
was
seconding
seconding
my
his,
motion.
this was
You're
first.
seconding his motion.
Yeah.
Because he
All
was
right.
first, I'm just saying.
All right, so let's have a discussion. We're talking.
I'm willing to
5 days.
wait the 7 days because, let's find out what, I mean, John Fenton may be painting these tomorrow, or, I mean.
I don't know the answer to that, right.
I know.
Any other discussion from the board?
I think you have to, at the 7 day.
Well, I also think we should ask, what else was planned to be done, right? The signage and so on, whether or not it's ready and whether or not, in essence, the project as originally planned with the further recommendations could be accomplished in a week.
Yeah.
Because I think that was the intent. When we last spoke about this, the DPW basically said, we are going to have the signings, we are going to paint the appropriate markings and colors and so on and so forth. And be that as it may, that the project has taken longer. Right now, if we're close, we should find that out.
All right, so we have a first and a second to wait 7 days, see if we can get the answer.
Can we have a vote on my motion, Mr. Mayor? My motion was that we do it immediately. It was seconded by trustee Nunecker.
Do we want to amend the motion? Is anybody interested in amending the motion to do it immediately?
To do it, what?
Pardon?
You mean to do it within 7 days?
No, John would like us to close off 2 now, return them to handicap,
Right.
and not wait the 7 days.
Correct. That's my motion.
Let's just vote on it.
Yeah, all right. So, but we're voting on the first motion to wait a week.
No.
Yeah,
his is the first
Mine is the first.
All right.
Sorry.
Second.
No way.
All right, let's vote on the second. Let's vote on John's motion to do it immediately. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Okay, so now, can I vote on, if we don't get it done within 7 days,
Then we do what-
accept John's motion and do it immediately.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. So that's our plan. Thank you, everybody. All right. I'd like to get back to the schedule now in the treasurer's report, please. Thank you, Brandy.
Did you get all of that?
Yeah, I don't think so. Look at your PowerPoint later.
I'll send it to you. It's-
Okay, the treasurer's report is for the period ending February 29th. The tax collector's account ended the month with $166,738.25. The general fund ended the month with $70,883.41. The water fund ended the month
Karen,
with...
can you wait 1 second, please?
Sorry.
That's okay. We'll give you time. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy. Where you should go.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brandy.
I wanted to thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Karen.
It's okay. The water fund ended the month with $358,266.65, and the sewer fund ended the month with $550,242.99. Vouchers presented for payment in the general fund total $81,717.54. In the water fund, $23,233.42. In the sewer fund, $49,961.55. We had one bill for the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Study Grant in the amount of $66. And we had a payment in the Water Main Project Fund for $274,740. The operating statement is provided for the revenue and expenditures through March 10, 2020. The water and wastewater billing and adjustments have been reviewed and signed off by the Water and Wastewater Department liaisons and are presented for authorization.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the water adjustments as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And I would like to make a motion that we accept the wastewater adjustments as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, the 2020-2021 budget process is underway. The second and third budget workshops were held on February 18th and March 3rd. The next workshop will be held on Thursday, March 19th at 6:30, and that will be to review the Highway and Fire Department. On March 26th, the General Fund and Police budget, and April 7th will be a review of the total general budget and the water and the sewer budgets. The public hearing on the budget is scheduled for April 14th, which is also the regular meeting.
Thank you, Karen. We have no amendments to vote on, correct?
No.
Very good. Okay, police and court. Oh, I'm sorry.
How much longer will it be till you get to the issue around?
You know what? If you would like, we could, let me just finish.
Okay.
We'll finish that, if you would like. If the board's in favor, we can jump to that part right now.
That would be fast.
How would you like that?
That would be
We're
great.
trying to be accommodating. All right, so we're going to jump ahead to the water department report.
Or are we doing this through highway?
Well, there's two components. I think there's,
Okay.
the water is the biggest component of the piece.
So February's report, the distribution project continues. We have Livingston, Chestnut, and Platt are, all the water mains, with the old water main's been vacated. The new water main is live, and all the service connections to the curb boxes have been completed, every single one of them. They've been doing valve exercising and locating for the water line project. There was a fire hydrant that was hit by a car in Ryan Cliff that they repaired, normal maintenance. So what we're talking about with regard to the asphalt,
Brant, can I jump ahead? Maybe since we have Dave here, if he would like to even add more to the because I think there was an interest in the project and the status of the project, which Brant did, but I believe Dave, our contractor, can give a more detailed, even where we're going in the next phase, because he's available.
Can I just say, my other question is because there are many residents who are not here tonight and don't know you're making an update. Can you at some point provide an opportunity for all the residents to hear about the future, you know, the end game?
Well, this is going to be,
This is it?
it will be in our minutes, and this will be televised, right? So we, as you know, we try to get out as much information as we can.
It's not easy.
Dave?
You want me to speak to the schedule first?
Yeah.
Okay. With a little bit of innovative thinking on our part, in the beginning of the project, we pulled some gate valves off of Route 9 and brought them into the intersections on Livingston, Platt, and Chestnut, which allowed us to absolutely complete all of the piping, test it, chlorinate it, and also put all the services in prior to the pipe being run on Route 9. What advantage that gave us was we'll be able to start paving as soon as the asphalt plant's open. If we hadn't have done that, the services would have had to been completed after the pipe on Route 9 is completed. We've taken that out of sequence. So we've saved a tremendous amount of time and a lot of aggravation to the property owners of driving on my lousy streets. And I apologize for that, and I'll get the crew on it Friday again, and we'll hit it a little harder. The asphalt plants are opening the 13th. I've got to get with Stack Construction to see if they're prepared to get started.
Dave, is that 13th of March?
No. You said the 13th.
April, yeah.
I'm sorry. I meant April. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Excuse me.
That was an important date.
Yes, it was. And we'd like to get started immediately, as soon as the plant's open. I talked to them today, and they again said the 13th, but if the weather stays a little nicer, it might back up a week, but I can't promise you that. It's going to get, if we do the mill and pave where we're going full width,
Yes.
that hasn't been decided yet.
It hasn't.
No, we've given a proposal.
Don't forget, you wanted to talk about this part first, so.
We've given the village a proposal.
I was
to do
stopped
that
from talking.
Versus doing just the trench line, okay? The trench line, it's more expensive by the ton to install it just in the trench line than it is to get a big machine in there, mill the whole road out, and instead of putting, 80 ton down a day, you'll be able to put 500 ton down a day. So by taking the money in the contract that we had for the trench paving and spreading that out over the width of the project, it will cost more money, but you're utilizing that money for the trench pavement in a much better way, in my opinion, and I'm sure their opinion as well. You'll have a basically in the street when you're done. Now, that being said, it's going to get messy. It's going to get actually worse before it gets better, because milling that street, you have to mill the whole street, okay? And you'll be riding on that subgrade for a few days until we get it paved. But it'll be short-lived, as short as we can make it, and if we go that route. And, we'll get it paved as quickly as we can. Once it's done, you'll be very happy, I'm sure. John Fenton and I, if this proposal goes through, we're going to address the storm sewers.
What does that mean?
There might be some additional basins put in for drainage and cleaning the existing system that's there. There are a few pipes that might need replacement, not many, a couple, maybe one or two. And then the adding of these dry wells will greatly improve the drainage on the streets. And John, because he's here every day, he knows where those are needed the most. So
I would like to just address the schedule as well, 1 second. That if we would have been on the regularly proposed, the original proposed schedule, we would not be done with plat at this time.
No,
Just so everybody knows, we are ahead of schedule. The good news is we're ahead of schedule. The bad news in terms of paving, we're ahead of schedule, right? So now we have to wait for whether we were going to do a trench and fill or a complete repave, we have to wait for the blacktop plants to open. And that's the conundrum that we're in today, right?
And we'll try our best.
So cold patch is never, was never intended to be like this smooth awesomeness of a road surface, so.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, because down at my end, which is in the intersection, it's Beach and Livingston both, because a lot of coal patch was thrown down there. It's now been all plowed all over the place and on the grassy strips and lawns, and I think there's a cleanup that probably needs to be done somewhere. The second thing is, can I just be clear, when we first did the information sessions, I recall saying that there was an original plan to bore the lateral and not to dig them. So what happened is very different in terms of how much the streets were torn up.
Originally, we felt that we would be able to pull the new service in as we pulled the old service out. And they were so deteriorated that it didn't work.
There were at least 6 holes dug all over down my end because they couldn't even find where the lateral pipes were. So I'm just saying.
That was a difficult connection.
As a consequence, there is no trench covering. It's every house, there's a bump and a torn up road. So I don't even see how you could consider just paving the trench. The other half of the road would be third world.
Well, believe it or not, underneath all of that roughness, there is a saw cut that has been made.
A what?
Saw cuts have been made for the trench line, and they would become more defined once we started to do the excavation for the trench fill paving. But it is what it is.
I'm just saying, I don't see how you could even have an alternative to only pave the trench. I don't understand.
And I think you're going to see where we're going, Donna.
Okay.
And I love your thinking, and we're going to get there.
Okay.
Right?
The last thing is, I understood, because I had sludge all over the front of my property because the drain on the corner of Livingston and Beach, apparently they tried to discharge water from one of the deep holes with mud, and I said, why did you do it, come all the way over to my side of the street and dump it? And the answer was, because the drain on the other side of the street actually couldn't accept it, and so it actually went over the road and went down the other side. So, all I'm saying is that's how I understood that the drains weren't working. So a lot of people on these streets have a lot of questions, and it's very, very helpful to hear you.
I think these people are going to address that, and I think the best outcome will come from it. I really do. Hopefully. In regards to the rest of the schedule, we are making some connections on the far end up by the hospital. That's out of the DOT right away, because we don't have the DOT permit yet. That's coming soon, before the 13th. And then on the 13th, we intend to start installing pipe starting at the intersection of Market Street and Route 9 and heading towards the hospital. Now, when that starts, parking will be very limited as we move along. We're going to have to, on a daily basis, there'll be no parking in the immediate areas where we're working, so that we can allow the traffic to get by us. We'll have extensive traffic control. There'll be as many as 4 people flagging at any time, like in the intersections, to try to keep the flow as best as we possibly can. We're going to bring in a couple of, I don't know if you've seen them along the main highways, the signs that they have, that solar signs, that like a message board. We're going to figure out what we want it to say, and I'm going to put one on each end of the project, maybe a couple of weeks before starting, to start warning people that, you know, the tornado's coming through. I shouldn't say that, you know, but it's going to be very disruptive. I can't tell you that any other thing than that. I can't sugarcoat it. Traffic's going to be really, really backed up for a while until we get past, at least past Livingston Street.
Yeah, can you say if you're going to reroute traffic like they would during certain, you know?
One lane's going to be closed. So one lane is going to be closed.
But you wouldn't like to redirect traffic down Platt or Chestnut to come to, you know, go around the whole thing?
And so,
do you want Route 9 traffic coming down Mulberry?
yeah, so,
No, not BG.
yeah, so Donna, that's a good question that we talked about, and the consideration was those streets are so bad, to route traffic through them right now would not be the right solution to do.
But as a practical matter, people are going to be going through there.
Yes, we're not going to be able to stop them.
More than they are now.
The
That's
local
for sure.
folks will know enough
So we're gonna get-
to, you know, take the back streets, but
Can't
you
talk
have
it.
this, you know, you have a wonderful community here. A lot of people want to come here and see it and be part of it, and they're not going to know how to get through other than wait in line until they get by our crew, so.
The timing is that the Route 9 construction is going to start before the paving of Livingston.
Same day. We hope to start the same day.
So you're going to pave first and then Route 9 or
No.
not?
No. They'll be going on at the same time.
If we could get through the meeting tonight and get to that point. Yes.
I'm not here just on my own. There's a whole lot of people asking.
Absolutely, and Don, I agree with you. I've been out walking on the streets and I've been talking to everybody, and you are representing exactly what everybody is saying, so thank you.
And the only last thing is if you've watched a Welsh sanitation truck drive down Livingston Street on Monday, the cloud of dirt is going over the rooftops. It's a sight to behold, so appreciate it. I really appreciate your update, thank you. And Mr. Mayor, thank you.
The way these folks have been proactive with the village, I would assume sometime prior to starting on the 13th, the week of the 13th.
We should have another workshop.
Yeah, they'll have another meeting to address the schedule and, you know, the whole project again, and what's coming on Route 9, I would assume, and the paving on the side streets.
So can you just say one more time?
Yeah, you were going to, you started to say we're going to try to clean up Livingston or these streets.
I'll put the group.
When would that happen?
Friday.
This Friday?
Yes.
And when would you start paving that?
The 13th of April.
If we have to pass and agree on passing resolutions tonight to be able to get to that point.
Do we need to be here?
Only if you want to hear
You
what
might
we're
as well,
gonna say.
because it's,
It's coming up next. Yeah. Right. So, but just to address everybody's concerns, I think you've heard tonight that we're trying to address the paving issue. We're trying to be proactive at doing that. We're also going to try to address the culvert issue as well at the same time, so that when we do a project, we're trying to understand what we're doing in completeness, so that if we decide to mill and then fill, we have proper drainage, proper runoff into drains and storm runoff drains that are going to work, right? So we recognize that where we got to today was not anticipated with the amount of construction that we had to do. These guys have been, I'm going to tell you, these guys have been fantastic. Every Friday they're out there trying to do their best to keep the roads in a passable condition, but this kind of weather, they're changing frequently on them. And it's a difficult job to stay on top of, while they're also trying to do their other work. So I have nothing but high regard for what these guys have been doing to help us get to this point. And as I mentioned before, the good news is we're ahead of schedule. The bad news is, we're ahead of schedule. And that's why we now have this situation which we're trying to deal with. Okay? Thank you, Dave.
So to that end, originally in the contract with Dave's company, for the trench paving, which is to restore the trenches, the portion of his contract was for $225,000. He has given us a bid to mill the 3 streets 4.5 inches deep and regrade and prep as necessary. Now, the regrading is going to be a situation where we can take a lot of the ponding and the dips and the undulations out, and you know, probably in the situations where people's driveways have sunk a couple inches, we can kind of, you know, boost that up a little bit. For those 3 streets, including in the areas where they go into the intersection, like in front of your house, that would be an additional $292,830. So, I mean, I find the offer to be attractive. The total amount would be $517,830. We checked with the Environmental Facilities Corp. and with the state, and they had said that we could make such a change order to our contract because of the labyrinth kind of service connections we have to make and the grid work of trenching, that it isn't truly restoring the road. I mean, just by spot trenching, we're not doing as good of a job as we could by doing the whole resurfacing project. So, and our attorney has said that this would be it's approved as a change order to the existing contract with him, based upon case law and some comptroller opinions that he read. So the significance of that is, we know it's a good price, but we would normally have to go out to public bid and do the posting, advertising, give a bidding period, and then have a sealed bid opening and things like that. But we can actually just accept this tonight. So I propose that we do so under the change order to our existing contract with Dave Companion's company, Grant Street Construction. So again, it would be a total of $517,830 for 160,000 square feet of pavement, milling down 3 streets 4.5 inches deep, regrade and prep as necessary.
That's intersection.
It goes into the areas wherever they had to dig, yeah.
Which is, the 225,000 is part of what's already been approved for this.
Right, so we already have budgeted 225 toward this. It would only require an additional $292,830. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the bid.
Second that motion immediately.
Yeah, discussion?
Before the,
So, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. We had talked about this being inside the contingency, so in other words...
It is inside the contingency, yeah.
You're going to check, yeah. Thank you.
Our contingency is approximately 10%, so, I mean, his bid was around $4.6 million, so... Yeah.
But it doesn't make the total cost go up, we're just using the contingency.
Yeah. That's a good way to present it to everyone else.
And don't we have to also talk about the ban?
And then that was my next thing. And I thought Karen would talk about that.
Okay, all right. You want to do them separately?
We vote on this, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Well, okay.
Because they're kind of linked together.
We're supposed to show that, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to demonstrate that we have the money before we accept a bid.
Right.
But this is a change order, so we can vote first.
To accept the change order?
Without doing the bond stuff, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we had a first, we had a second.
Yep.
Any other discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none. I believe we're trying to move forward to do a full mill and fill.
While we're doing construction, can I do?
Yeah. So,
and then he would.
Right.
There's another component.
So there's another component, also working with Dave. We know that there are several catch basins that need to be installed on Livingston, Platt, and Chestnut. So, and there's one on Route 9 at Chestnut, which is on the state road, but they will not claim it, so we're going to have to replace it. So Dave said he can install some new catch basins for us for approximately $5,000 for each catch basin. So we'd be restoring the one on Route 9 at Chestnut, one in the area of 2022 Livingston Street, an area on Platt between Mulberry and Route 9, TBD, but somewhere along there, and an area in Chestnut between Mulberry and Route 9, the exact location TBD. So the idea is we're going to get these guys going to come in, they're going to build us a couple of basically what are called dry wells. And the idea behind these constructions are basically they're just deep pits with rock on the bottom. And it turns out that we have very porous soil. So the idea is stormwater goes in there, it doesn't fill up, but it goes in there, and then it slowly percolates out into the out into the substrate and eventually returns to the aquifer that's underneath Rhinebeck. And the nice things about these are that they don't exacerbate the problem of stormwater runoff going into Crystal Lake. They're very effective. They do require maintenance, which is something we have not done consistently in some of other dry wells. So they have to be cleaned out periodically, but we can do that. So I would like to make a motion that we take $20,000 from the general fund to pay for the installation of 4 dry wells, as I said, Route 9, 2022 Livingston Street, and then 2 areas on Platt and Chestnut, TBD.
So second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah. Dave, were you going to get started on these before the mills, the asphalt mills open?
I'll start on the Monday.
Okay.
I would also,
I'll have it here before the end of the week.
I'd also just make like a comment that we have, last year we spent, and we hire a vac truck every year to go around and do a section of the village to clean out our catch basins, right? And that's the proper method for doing that, to clean them and get them done. That's a process that we've instituted for the last couple of years, and we're actually going to continue to do that because we have many catch basins in the village, not just the ones in this area that need this work. So
Yeah, we've been doing that a lot longer than.
yeah,
We've been doing that.
yes.
We need to get a faster cycle, basically. Yeah.
Could I just ask a question after I've touched my face 20 times? Your foreman, or the head guy who comes down in the white truck, told me the drain on the end of Livingston at Beach was shot. So that's not on your list. So I would just ask, how would we, can I just pass that on to you? Can somebody check that?
It probably needs cleaning.
You think it's just,
That
that's
would
all?
be my guess.
He's the one who said that's why all this stuff went. Okay.
Next time, tell them to pass it on to us.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little funny story. That we have a little PSTD down at our corner down there, so that when you arrived the other day, for like the 9th time, everybody came out and said, "What are you doing?" And it only happened a couple days ago. Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I'm just teasing.
I know you are, and I'm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a first and a second to start construction using our 2019-20 budget to get these catch basins in preparation for the paving. Any other discussion?
It's good, it was a good price, right, Rick?
This is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very good price.
And
Thank you.
I guess we're like, this is not coming out of the water fund, this is coming out of the general
The general
fund.
street,
Just
yeah.
to make that distinction.
Okay.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Get the excavator going.
I think it was going already today. I saw it.
All right. So now we also have, Karen, we have to also talk about the ban, correct? Mm-hmm. So related to this same project is a ban that we also have to,
Which is a short-term bond.
yes.
Okay, so whether the EFC grant covers it or is going to cover it and roll it over into long-term funding, which will be done probably around June, between June and October, there may be a cash flow issue. So we're looking to ask the board to authorize a bond anticipation note resolution in the amount of $450,000. And let's just say that $300,000 is in the grant. There's $150,000 that the board has been discussing to possibly do Mulberry Street.
That's why I wanted you to wait. I wanted you here.
So the authorization the resolution is for the board to authorize the issuance of this $450,000. Then there's a 20-day permissive referendum period. And then at that time, if things at EFC change or we get exact numbers, the board can decide to say, hey, we only need to borrow $150 from Mulberry Street. So we're asking to authorize $450,000 in bond anticipation notes because it takes 20 days for the permissive referendum. But within that, with everything moving as fast as it's moving, I would be concerned if we didn't do it and we were starting to pay the bigger bills later on in the project.
Yeah, May will start, April will be, if we can get in the state highway and get started and we can start paving, all that comes to probably, April will be $500,000. There won't be hardly anything this month. But then you'll get into the $800,000-900,000 a month after that.
Right. Right. So for that reason, I asked the board to authorize the issuance of $450,000.
It's up to, yeah, and we're not gonna.
Right. Again, it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that you have to borrow that. It's just, if we just did 150 and then we get into late April and early May and we've exhausted our funds, then we have a cash flow issue, and it takes 20 days for permissive referendum and then another 30 days for the estoppel period if we do go to bond. So this at least gets the clock going for the bond anticipation note for the permissive referendum.
So I just want to summarize for everybody here. What you've heard is that we're trying to completely mill and fill and fix the drainage on Livingston, Chestnut, and Platt, right? And that we're also moving forward to do the same process on Mulberry from Market Street to Platt, okay? At the same time, right? So that we can take care of that whole area in terms of the pavement project.
I hate to be parochial, but on Beach Street, they dug huge holes on either side of the intersection. It's very, very degraded for a short distance on both sides of Livingston on Beach. So I'm still not clear about whether that will be fixed in some way.
Yeah.
And this may also, Mulberry will take care of Mulberry. North Parsonage may have the same issue.
When we get to Beach, for instance, on each one of the streets that we've crossed it, we're going to go in both directions until we cover where we've...
Where you've dug up. Okay,
right.
thank you, thank you.
Good question.
Good answer.
Okay, and any other discussion on the band anticipation?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hearing none, I'd like to, all in favor of approving the authorization for $450,000 for the band? Say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, so carried, we can start the band process.
Who motioned and seconded it? Did you motion it, Gary?
Gary motioned.
Okay.
I second.
I think Paul seconded
And
it.
Gary, okay, Gary and Paul got it.
Before the money ran out.
So that's it for the water department report.
That's it, then you're done?
Very good. Good job. Great
All
job.
right.
Kidding.
Now that our crowd is...
Just in with everything.
You guys done with me? Or is there
I think so.
Right. Yeah, I think so.
I think we're done with you. No, we're not done with you. We got Route 9 to do. But for tonight, Dave, yes, we're done with
All
you.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
John.
Dave. Thank
I
you.
was up 3 this morning.
Yes. And thank you for the souvenir.
That's quite all right. You want me to carry that downstairs?
No, we can take it.
We'll get it.
We'll get
It's
it.
heavy.
We got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care, Dave.
Thank you.
Can you guys do a resolution that I can have John for about a half an hour tomorrow?
John, which, John Fenton?
John Fenton. Yeah, he's busy.
I know.
Yeah.
It's hard to
I
know,
know.
but I really need to go over a couple things with him on those dry wells.
I will personally bug him.
I'll stay in town until I get a chance to see him.
Okay.
All right.
What time you want him?
Whenever he's free.
All right, because he tries to get here by 8.
Okay. I'll knock on the door at 8 and see.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
The office won't be open, so I suggest you call. Do you have his number?
Yes, yes, sir.
I would call because we're not open yet for business.
Okay.
And so if you're knocking, won't be heard if he's up here.
Okay. All right. Thanks
Good
again.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, I'm going to go to police and court.
Yeah.
Department reports. All right, for the court summary, this is for January. Tickets that were completed from both court sessions and mailed in for the month were 167 tickets. Revenue from the state was $4,033. Police report. Total number of incidents in the town was 20. This is for the month of February. Total number of incidents in the town was 20. Total number of incidents in the village was 67. Total number of tickets in the town, 21. Total tickets in the village, 58. Number of arrests were 0. And total number of accidents were 7. So that ends for the police report. Fire department. And this is really fire and EMS. Chrissy, thank you for sticking around. If anybody has any questions or you want anything to add, we can add that. This is March 10th. For the month of February 2020, there were a total of 63 calls. 18 were fire calls, 44 were EMS, and 1 motor vehicle accident. And they responded to mutual aid 5 times during that month. On Thursday, February 27th, we're proud to say that the board had approved previously a new command car. The new command car was put in service and is here and is in use as we speak. If anybody has not had a chance to see it, it's no longer, it's red. Just so you know. I wish I had a picture to show you, but I didn't think to get it. And what we approved at the same time was, as soon as the command car was done, the conversion of the previous chief's car into a BLS fly vehicle. And that was placed in service on March 2nd. And this vehicle is identified, you'll see the different striping on it now. In fact, I didn't recognize it when I first saw it. It's been certified by New York State Response, and it's as a BLS, Basic Life Support is BLS for EMS services. And on February 26th, the fire medic officers attended a seminar on the first 5 minutes, a strategy meets tactics and tasks at the 911 center. And the annual New York State DEC burn ban is in effect from March 16th to May 14th. We're reminding all residents that brush burning is prohibited during this period of time. Any questions on fire? Hearing none. We'll go to building, planning, and zoning.
For this month, there is no report.
Oh, very good. Highway.
Okay. For February 2020, the guys were out doing road and street sign repairs, traffic sign replacement, tree trimming around traffic signs and at intersections, some pothole repairs, which are temporary with the cold patch, some brush and leaf pickup, some minor storm drain repair, vehicle and equipment maintenance, and garage and shop inventory and update. There was no plowing this last month. That's the report.
When does the yard waste pickup start?
Give me a sec, I have to look it up. But I will look it up and I'll have the answer for you in a sec.
Do you want us to go on?
You go on and I'll answer.
Okay.
I have to look it up.
All right. Wastewater.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in the cloud and I can't find my files.
It's under departments.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
wastewater.
I have a picture and also
Yeah, it says something went wrong.
It's
Yeah.
there.
I pulled it up earlier today.
I have
It's
it.
I read
there.
it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There's a picture and the report.
Well,
Do you want?
You want it, John?
I'm just going to read off the top numbers, Gary, thanks. Okay, thank you. The wastewater treated 4 million gallons, gallons of sludge processed 31,800, pounds of sludge processed 6,309 pounds. So those top line numbers, thanks Gary. And the picture, I just wanted to, it's so way to take a good picture of the new sludge tank. But that was the best I could do. But
No picture of the sludge?
No. I did think of doing a video, but guys, the job came out really terrific. Thank you again for the support of that. The new grate extends for the full breadth and beyond of the perimeter of the tank, which is way safer, and the tank went in. It's actually a little bit smaller, but much more efficient. Job is, we anticipated to be about $55,000 for everything. It is. I haven't seen the final numbers, but everything is done. And, the image on top, if you could just look at the motor, that's in the process of being replaced. Like Gary, I know that you spoke to Brian about that, and that's on order. And everything will be new. That's great.
Do we know when the pump is coming? I mean, the motor.
Yeah.
The motor for the end of grind.
I think maybe as early as next week. Brian definitely placed the order.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I just didn't know the delivery date.
Yeah,
In terms of when
I was there this morning, and I should have nailed down the date, but I think it's as early as sometime next week, which is just great.
And Brian's going to put that in, or who puts that in?
I think Brian's going to do it, yeah. Okay. And you guys, yeah.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to accept all the department reports as entered.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Very good.
Answer Vanessa?
Oh, I'm sorry, you had a question.
No problem. Well, so on the landing page for the Village of Rhinebeck at rhinebecknyvillage.org, which is the village website, on the right-hand side, underneath the calendar, there is a section called Yard Waste Pickup and Annual Collection of Yard Waste Materials. So spring cleanup begins on April 1st and is carried on a continuous basis until May 15th. After that, we will begin with our north of East and West Market Street, 1st and 3rd Mondays, south of East and West Market Street, 2nd and 4th Mondays of the week. So if people want to, I know sometimes people get a little confused on the schedule. It is permanently affixed to the landing page for the Village of Rhinebeck. So you can see it on the lower right-hand side.
Thank you. Any other questions? Does that answer, Vanessa, did that answer your question? Okay, on to the committee reports. The first is the Autism Supportive Committee. And we're, as I've been mentioning, we're now into phase 2 for the Autism Supportive Committee. And part of that was to raise an additional $10,000 for the matching grant from the Thomas Trust Fund. So we have scheduled an event. The event is going to be on March 31st at 5:30 at Terrapin, and it's called the Rhinebeck Chefs for Autism Dinner, right? Tickets went on sale for $100 per person, and we sold out immediately for that event. So we're proud to say that we have, if everything goes well, we have met our goal of matching the grant for the $10,000, and we'll soon begin phase 2 of this project. Tree Committee.
Okay, one sec. Wrong document.
Got it. I can't read this really. I don't even need my glasses.
Do you have it?
I thought I put the new one.
I have a hard copy.
No, I have the one from March.
March 3rd?
Which I just put up in the class.
Right here.
Oh, wait.
No, is that the one from February, one from March?
This is March 3rd.
Okay, good, that's fine.
Oh, I got the old one.
Yeah.
Well, that's
the old
up
one
there
got put
too,
up, so I
yeah.
put the other one up. Okay.
Oh, I got it.
So,
These are
the
nice.
Tree Commission will have its annual spring planting on Saturday, April 25th. And it's a wonderful community event. I don't know exactly where the meeting spot will be for that yet. There are approximately a dozen trees that are scheduled to be planted on Platt, North Parsonage, and South. And this is really a lovely usually a lovely half-day. We go out, we have some support from the village highway department, local volunteers. Sometimes we get kids from the Interact Club to come in as well. And we go out and we plant trees around the village. If you notice around the village, you'll see some trees, some young trees with 2 wooden stakes and maybe some plastic mesh holding it up. Those are trees that are planted by the Tree Commission every year. So we put in about a dozen in the fall. We'll take a look at them when we get a chance, but the next round will be a dozen on April 25th. In addition, the Tree Commission received an application from the Third Evangelical Lutheran Church for the removal of a tree in front of the parsonage, as the roots have heaved the sidewalk and caused a tripping hazard. So the Tree Commission recommends that the tree be removed by a certified arborist with insurance. And they also said that they would consider replacing the tree at future village tree planting. So I'd like a motion to accept the Tree Commission's recommendation that the tree at the Third Evangelical Lutheran Church be removed.
Second. Discussion? I do have a question.
Sure.
Stump removal.
We grind, generally. And I know that the guys have been grinding on an as-needed basis. There's a lot of stumps around. And that is something that I would like to talk to them about. It's usually a spring and summer.
Right.
Spring and summer.
That's why I'm bringing it up, because
Yeah.
I know we
have a
grind.
we grind.
But when that tree comes down, it'd be nice to get it done. You know what I'm saying?
Completely.
Completely.
Well, I have to, it's, the arborist will be a private arborist, so I'll have to keep an eye on it, see when it comes through.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion on the tree removal at Third Lutheran Church on Livingston? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So accepted.
And I have one more mention. The Tree Commission would also like to establish a pruning corps. Basically, the young trees that we put out into the village over the first couple of years need a little bit of TLC. Sometimes they push suckers at the base, which need to be trimmed off, or they have branches that are growing in the wrong place. So if anybody's interested in basically being taught how to do some light pruning, we're not talking about climbing up on a tree, this is all stuff you can do from the ground, some light pruning to help keep the newly planted trees in the village growing straight and tall, then the Village Tree Commission would like to hear from you. You can, I guess, reach us through the clerk's office at this time. That's it.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
In the February report, Tom advises a tree on Stratini Drive that is crooked and needs to come down, then be replaced. I think that might be my tree. I like it. It goes on an angle. It's growing away from my other tree, but I like it there.
Okay.
So.
Is it a hazard? Okay. Well, I think there was no action taken on it, so I'm assuming that talking somebody else went out and took a look and said it's okay.
It's okay? Good.
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to see it.
All right, Veterans Committee. The Veterans Committee met on March 2nd. The Veterans Committee is seeking the assistance of a grant writer to work with them to submit a grant for $87,565 to the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation and the Environmental Protection Fund Grants Program for Parks, Preservation, and Heritage for the restoration and preservation of the War Memorial down at Legion Park. All right, so this was discussed at one of our budget meetings as an action we would like to pursue. So we are actively trying to now get this grant available. The grant timeline becomes available in May. In July, the application is due. By September, we need to have the memorial on the Historic Register, and we've been confirmed that that will happen by September timeframe. And then December, the grant gets awarded. So I can go into a description, but the description, the new grant is not out. I'm reading the description from the 2019 grant, assuming that it's not going to change, but this grant implements the Environmental Protection Fund of Act 1993 of the Article for Environmental Conservation Law, which created this program for park preservation and heritage grants. EPF Park Preservation and Heritage Grant funding is available for the acquisition, planning, development, and improvements of parks, historic properties, and historic areas located within the physical boundaries of the state of New York. Grants can fund up to 50% of the total eligible project cost, or up to 75% if the project is located in a high-poverty area as defined. We do not qualify. Grants awarded are capped at $600,000 if the total project cost is greater than $4 million. Up to $1 million may be requested. Again, our grant will be for $87,565. To cover the remaining 50%, we have approached the Frost Foundation, and they have asked us to submit an application for the balance of what the Historic Parks Grant will not cover. So, again, our next meeting is April 6th. We welcome all veterans to come and join us for this meeting.
Gary, Mr. Mayor, you sent an outline of this grant, and boy, this is a tough one.
It's not an easy grant.
Ooh, goodness.
That's why we need help.
Yeah.
It's not one that we are going to write.
No,
Right.
no.
It's a CFA grant. It requires a lot of input.
Yeah.
We're willing to do the legwork and help answer the questions which we've been given, which I discussed previously, but we actually need help to do this.
An idea, could you reach out to, is it the Dutchess County Veterans Parks, to see if there are other parks in the county that might have had this similar
That's a great idea.
situation? Maybe he knows of a grant writer for a similar municipality that went through this process. I forget his name, but he's.
Yeah, I do
read
too,
his
but
book. He's very
I can find it. That's a great idea. I did contact, as you know, I did contact one person who was a grant writer who has accepted a new job and can no longer do any consulting work. But they did give us reference to 2 others that I'm going to follow up on to see. And I'll report to the board next time on our progress. Okay. Next are special requests. I don't know if we're going to read all these, but the first one is the Rhinebeck Area Chamber of Commerce for sidewalk sales. The dates are 5/15, 16th, and 17th, and then the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd for those sales.
Also the 24th too, I think.
21st, 22nd, 23rd.
I think the 24th is a rain day.
Rain day.
Rain day.
Oh, that's rain day. That's right.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to accept the Rhinebeck Area Chamber of Commerce sidewalk sales.
Seconded.
Discussion? There is one discussion. I don't know if anybody saw their email. Our DPW, our building enforcement officer, said could be an issue with some of the sidewalks, which you heard tonight, in relationship to that sidewalk and to this. So he would like to see at least an attempt to make the sidewalk repairs done. And I followed up to see if all the sidewalks have been marked in the area for the business district, and they have not all been marked. So one of the things we're going to ask the chamber, and I'm meeting with the chamber tomorrow morning, I'm going to ask them to help us work with the businesses to fix the situation of the sidewalks. And I have a 9 o'clock meeting with them.
Great.
Okay. So the motion to accept, we did that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Next, the American Legion Memorial Day Parade is now being scheduled for May 25th. Again, this is put on by the American Legion, and one of the requirements for this, I will note, is that the application did not include the DOT permit. They're aware that they need to apply for a DOT permit. So I would like to make a motion that we accept American Legion Memorial Day Parade on 5/25 on the condition the DOT permit is approved.
Yeah. Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Rhinebeck Porch Fest, an event that is coming on, is now scheduled for September 26th of 20. We have all of our completed forms for this. I'd like to make a motion to accept the Rhinebeck Porch Fest on September 26th.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then the last is, let me get to this other paperwork here, because includes 2 parts. Part 1 of this is the traffic resolution for DCA at Dutchess County Agricultural Society Antique Car Show. So let me read this is from the Dutchess County Agricultural Society. Dear Mayor Bassett, the Board of Directors of Dutchess County Agricultural Society, Inc. respectfully submits the date to the restrict vehicular traffic on Mulberry Street north from Platt Avenue, except for access to designated parking lots. Parking lot attendants will be at the end of Mulberry and Platt to direct vehicles to designated parking lots. Okay? And this is for the Antique Car Show on May 5th. I'm dividing this up. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the request by Dutchess County Agricultural Society for the Antique Car Show.
And the
with
fair.
And the
And the
fair
fair.
on the 18th.
Pardon?
And the Dutchess County Fair, it's for both.
Well, I said I
Oh,
want to
you're
break
gonna
it
do
into
them
two
separate,
parts.
okay,
I
gotcha.
specifically said I want to break it in. One is
Oh, okay.
Second.
because this one deals with this street modification, so it's very specific. All right, so we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. All right, the second part, which is the complete, we've always asked, and they've always provided with us, the calendar of events for all of the Dutchess County Fair events. So we have the complete list, which has been put up for the events. I will read through them briefly. In April is the winter, they start off with the winter storage removal, the spring lamb sale, the autism field day, and Camping World RV show. In May, we just talked about the Rhinebeck Antique Car Show and Swap Meet, the Northeast Outdoor Show, and Barn Star Antiques at Rhinebeck. In June, Northern Dutchess Hospital Starlight Ball, ENY Summer Classic Livestock Show, and the Rhinebeck Crafts Festival. July, Hudson Valley Hot Air Balloon Festival, the Pelorium Testing, ENY Junior Holstein Show, the Dutchess County Youth Goat Show, Empire State Ride. And then August
And
20th.
Pelorium testing is like a sick chicken kind of test. It's like a chicken disease. I had to look it up.
Really?
So, sorry to
Right.
interrupt.
Didn't know that.
It's okay. Detail's good. August 25th to the 30th is the 175th Dutchess County Fair. September 12th to the 13th, September is Hudson Valley Wine and Food Festival, Potter Brothers Ski and Snowboard Clothing Sale, and then December 26th is the Rhinebeck New York Cider Festival. In Oktoberfest Handcrafted at Rhinebeck, again Barn Star Antiques at Rhinebeck, Fall Foliage Half Marathon and 5K, New York State Sheep and Wool Family Festival. And then finally in October, the winter storage intake. We've completed the cycle. All right, so I'd like to make a motion to accept the Dutchess County 2020 calendar events.
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, thank you.
Did you want me to give the amendments first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I do that real quick?
Yes, I missed that. Yes, please.
Parking for the fair?
Thank you.
I'll be quick because I know it's getting late. So as the Marist students presented, we'll be doing a special Trees for Tribs riparian planting in collaboration with the Tree Commission and high schoolers. So that's really exciting. It's May 2nd. It's going to be in conjunction with the Riverkeeper annual sweep. So they do this big event across the whole Hudson Valley. We're kind of building into that press. To get the word out about this, so that planting is part of the larger events series that day. I also want to mention our bronze application for the Climate Smart certification. We hope to be making an announcement soon, so just teasing that. Our CAPI grant, this is the 9-municipality project to do a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. We're doing a preliminary kickoff later in March. And the Climate Smart Community Task Force is collaborating on a bunch of events in April. April is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, so we're thinking of it as Earth Month. We are spreading the word about a clothing swap at Town Hall April 19th. April 22nd will be Bike to School Day. So that might be a good time for us to really look at the traffic patterns and the bikeability, walkability of South Parsonage and Millwood, going to the schools, in particular CLS. April 24th is Earth Day, and we're working with the PTSO to do an Earth Day celebration at Chancellor Livingston School from 3 to 6, open to the public, family friendly, and very informational. And then finally, April 28th, we have brought a new category to the Taste of Rhinebeck, which is, you know, everybody loves this event. But this new category will be for restaurants and businesses to talk about how, in what ways they are sustainable with their businesses. And so the Climate Smart Committee will be helping to judge that new category. Any questions? Okay,
Thank you. Thank you. Can't wait to hear. Okay, moving on. Other businesses. Trustee Nuniger, legal services.
So we did the RFP for engineering services and chose Ty and Bond as our village engineer. So we decided to refresh the bid for village attorney also, just to stay current with procurement laws, our own, as well as the state requirements. So I've written together an RFP. I'll just I'll just read a few pieces from it. The Village of Rhinebeck seeks proposals from, here I'm not even, sorry, qualified law firms to provide professional legal services as village attorney. Copies of the request for proposals are available at the Village Hall between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. The scope of services, the Village of Rhinebeck seeks general professional legal services as village attorney outlined in the attached pages. So basically the scope of services is attending regular and special board meetings when necessary, preparing legal notices, contracts, and opinions, providing services in connections with the acquisition of easements and title to real estate property, including negotiation with property owners, preparing local laws, ordinances, and resolutions, representing the village in eminent domain assessment and other court proceedings, including appeals, consulting with village officials, employees, and members of the public regarding matters involving the village, attending meetings of the ZBA, the planning board, and other village boards and commissions, etc., reviewing insurance coverages, giving legal advice in contract negotiations, or acting as chief negotiator if requested, and with the DA's permission, prosecute violators of village laws or any person accused of committing an offense, etc. So it was Karen's idea to, when would you, what was the date that you wanted?
I think if you have it due on April 1st,
Yeah.
then it gives you time to go over it, and you can appoint it at the reorg meeting.
Right, if we can get it done before that. Right?
Yeah, we can. I mean, I looked it up. I think you can do a tighter period than that, but.
I think Gary means physically getting together to review them, right?
And-
Oh, well, yeah.
We won't have, we'll have
If we
some
don't-
workshops. That's all we have scheduled between now and that next meeting.
It's up to you. I mean, it's up to you guys.
Yeah.
We can get the bids back by then. Is that okay? Or
So
do you want us-
let's make a motion to adopt, and then let's go into discussion, right?
Yeah,
So,
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt it.
Second.
all right, now let's discussion, let's talk schedule. Right, because I think that's, we
I'm
need,
flexible. I just, that if we do a reorg meeting, we may not be appointing an attorney, but that's
Correct.
not necessary.
we can, I agree,
Right.
we can hold,
So
we
I'm-
can, we can
whatever-
keep the other attorney in perpetuity until we get this.
Yeah, so whatever you guys are comfortable with. I mean, are you saying this is a bad time?
No,
Do you want to do
no,
this in?
I just wondering if 30 days is enough. Less than 30 days, today's the 10th, and you want them back by April 1st. So it's basically 20 days.
Okay, let's do it 30 days then.
30 days is fine.
I'm sorry, what?
April
when-
So we
when is-
get 30 days.
For
To get
To
responses.
get back.
responses, okay.
Right.
And we have to go through advertising.
Right.
Right.
It's a sealed bid. This is a sealed bid opening, right? Oh, this is
It's RFP for professional
for
services.
professional services, right,
So-
that's right.
And it's going to take 5 days to get it out into the paper.
Yeah.
All right, so it doesn't leave anybody enough
So 30
to get
days,
them back and for us to review them.
so how about 30 days from the date of advertisement?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds better.
And the date of advertisement is when Karen can get it out the door, so.
And Karen, Do you know who to call at the county to post it on the New York State? You know, the county gives us access to the state bidding site, so that everything goes on there. I know that that's one of the shared services that they provide for us.
You were part of the RFP, so we can put it in.
So we have to, but we have to call the right person.
Yes.
So we have to find that person.
Okay.
My only other question is, who's the reviewers?
Well, we should, I would say, well, me and someone else, or,
I'd be happy to work with you if you'd like.
okay. Paul and,
Okay.
and I, Paul and me.
Paul and I will.
One question, we set up a mechanism with our engineer such that if we had minor questions, they could be handled real quick by an engineer, but if it looked like it was going to sort of blow up into a much larger event, then we would have to have some sort of process for approving the expenditure. And I don't know if it needs to be part of the RFP, but
I think, I like that.
you know,
And,
the idea that if any of us can call and if it takes like less than 2 hours of their time.
Yeah, I do
then
that
that's fine.
informally. If there's some new matter, then I say, yeah, I'm going to work with Rich on
I don't think you
that.
have to put that in the RFP, though.
So let's put it in the RFP,
Yeah,
but
but
certainly
we
in
should
our
straighten,
arrangement.
we
yeah.
should, we should have that protocol. in
Put it
place.
in the contract.
So we're not all just,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's very.
We're not
effective.
all initiating longer-term projects on our own, but we're also not hamstrung from just basic questions and things like that.
And multiple coming in at all one time.
Right,
So that we can have a systematic output of information as well.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
We get it.
With the contract, right, but I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it.
Okay, any other discussion?
It's a good job. It's good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carried, aye. Grant, bail reform, you wanted to investigate this some more.
I'm fine with it. Did you, do you want me to read it? Or do
It's up
wanna-
to you. I mean, I don't care.
Well, why don't you read it? I'll read the 5G one,
Okay.
unless you can't pull it up easily.
So, we've talked about bail reform and what's going on in New York State at multiple occasions, but this came to us from NICOM, and it's a resolution for the Village of Rhinebeck requesting amendments to the New York State criminal justice reform. And I'm just going to, basically, whereas while there was a need to reform New York's criminal justice statutes during the 2019 state legislative session, it is widely recognized that several of the drastic changes in the laws pertaining to discovery are overly broad and vague and have unintended consequences at the municipal level. And whereas the dramatic shortened time period in which prosecutors must disclose evidence to defendants and the broad expansion of the matters to which such discovery mandates apply will have significant costs, tax and justice implications for cities, villages, and police departments, local justices, courts, and code, parking enforcement, and departments. And whereas the discovery of reforms mandate that prosecutors disclose evidence to the defense within 15 days of arraignment for criminal changes, even if the defendant is not in custody. And it just goes on. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the end because they're proposing, and this is NICOM proposing to us, that now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Rhinebeck supports the following set of amendments proposed by New York State Conference of Mayors that are consistent with the intent of the criminal justice reform, which allow justice for more effective and affordable implementation. And the first one is to ensure that cities and villages are provided additional financial and operational support to offset the cost of these mandated measures. Allow 60 days for prosecutors to disclose evidence to the defense of criminal justice. Exclude from the accelerated discovery requirements any change not involving a misdemeanor or felony. Adjust a 20-day arrangement requirement to accommodate local courts that meet on a monthly basis, and allow prosecutors to withhold sensitive information, such as the victim contact information, without having to obtain court order. And so that's the summary. This has been reviewed by our sergeant, Pete Dunn, and he agrees with these. And so now I'd like
I
to...
talked to Pete Dunn and I talked to John, the judge, about it, and they're both
Absolutely.
In favor.
explained it very well to me, so.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the resolution of the Village of Rhinebeck requesting amendments to New York State criminal justice reforms.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried. This one I am punting to you, 5G.
So in a similar vein, if you recall, about a year and a half ago, there's a federal order that came out regarding 5G wireless services, which is small wireless facilities. It gets very complicated. It was a 160-page order. And I thought it was very industry friendly. I used to work in the wireless industry, and it seemed kind of like almost like a sop to the wireless industry. And the FCC put this order together. Now, New York State has put a New York State law into the state budget, and it's worse. I mean, quite frankly, it's worse. And so we have a similar resolution from NICOM that was sent to the mayor. The mayor brought this to my attention, and I reviewed this proposed state law with the federal order and discovered some of the same things that NICOM did. But here's the NICOM resolution. On behalf of the cities and villages compromising the membership of the New York State Conference of Mayors, I write to express strong opposition to Article 7, Part BB of the Transportation, Economic Development, and Environmental Conservation Budget Bill. This legislation would amend the General Municipal Law to add a new Article 13E entitled Small Wireless Facilities Deployment, which, much like the substantially similar 2018 to 19 executive budget, would severely restrict local government's authority to regulate wireless facilities by granting service providers unfettered rights of access to the municipal right-of-way and mandate specific application procedures for facilities in the right-of-way. While NICOM strongly supports universal high-speed internet access for all New Yorkers, the means by which this legislation mandates the installation of wireless facilities is fatally flawed and not in the public interest. Specifically, this proposal would establish uniform procedures affecting the siting of small wireless facilities and further restrict local authority to hold wireless companies responsible for installed in the municipal right-of-way. Additionally, local governments would be prevented from imposing meaningful indemnification clauses in right-of-way occupancy agreements and would be restricted from enforcing sufficient bonding requirements when installing facilities in municipal right-of-way. And I agree with this strongly, this part. Most remarkably, the bill would usurp local governing authority to address the public safety and aesthetic considerations related to the installation of the facilities for default approval of wireless installation. So basically, it kneecaps our ability to do aesthetic review standards for siting purposes, whereas the federal order at least allowed us to do that, unless it's in the historic district. Default approval remedies were specifically rejected by the FCC and excessive and meritless because the shot clocks are efficient and effective. So the FCC basically said, you can have these aesthetic reviews, you can have the planning review, but you got a shot clock consideration. You got 60 days, you got 90 days. That's something we could probably have worked under. But this is basically just says these are permitted uses. And you can't even come up with aesthetic standards unless you're in the historic district. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Achieving broadband ubiquity is an important and necessary goal for all municipalities in New York State. To that end, local officials are working to ensure all New Yorkers, regardless of where they reside and which communities the industry invests its technology, have equal access to high-speed broadband. Similarly, cities and villages throughout the state are eager for the economic opportunities and technological advances made possible by 5G. However, disadvantaging local governments by constraining their ability to hold telecommunications accountable for wireless equipment installed in the right-of-way is simply untenable. There is no doubt legislation would force local governments to abdicate their responsibility to ensure safe streets in support of the telecommunications providers' blatant attempt to receive an industry subsidy by eliminating local control over siting decisions in municipally owned and controlled rights-of-ways. Lastly, this bill has no state fiscal impact. And this is important, and consequently, this proposal shouldn't be addressed outside of the budget. You know how this works, right? There's a 550-page budget, and it's crammed with legislative goodies, that people want, and it shouldn't be part of the budget at all. A budget should be a budget. It shouldn't have a bunch of obscure, esoteric laws like the bond. I heard the Bond Reform Act was crammed in last year's budget, and now we're trying to fix it. So we're at Hasty's mercy. If he likes it, he can do whatever he wants. So I found out that a couple other things. The definition of antennas, the federal order was 3 cubic feet, now this is 6. I mean, this is like take a medicine ball and have 6 of them stacked on top of each other, 12 inches wide, and that's considered an antenna? That's not even a small wireless facility. So they could actually come in and put that right on these power poles in front of us, right, in our communities. And then the fee, we can only charge them $20 a site if they go on a power pole. And the federal order allowed us $70 a site. So there's just a bunch of things wrong with it. So anyway, considering going to the lobbying day and helping to work on this, but we should call our state reps and they may not even know this is in the budget.
None of this falls under the jurisdiction of the State Public Service Commission, does it? Because it's...
Well, I hope they ran
wireless.
it. I hope they ran it through the Public Service Commission.
You don't even know.
But who knows where it came from. So anyway, I propose that we adopt this symbolic resolution that I read.
Second. Very important.
Yeah, any other discussion?
No, thank you for the research.
And when this gets settled, I do want to pick up the discussion. We had one good meeting about the 5G, and I dropped the ball on it, but it wouldn't have mattered because now the regulations are moving targets.
Yes.
But
I agree. This is ongoing, and we need to have some say in the matter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a disaster for us.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Last on this other one is Parkinson's Awareness Month proclamation. We've done this before. Whereas Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurological movement disorder of the central nervous system, which has a unique impact on each patient. And whereas according to the Parkinson's Foundation, the American Parkinson's Disease Association, and the National Institute of Health, there are over 1 million Americans diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And whereas symptoms include slowness, tremor, difficulty with balance and speaking, rigidity, cognitive and memory problems, and whereas although new medicines and therapies may enhance life for some time for people with Parkinson's, more work is needed for a cure. And whereas increased education and research are needed to help find more effective treatments with fewer side effects and ultimately a cure for Parkinson's disease. And whereas, this is a multidisciplinary approach to Parkinson's disease, care includes local wellness support and caregiver groups, and whereas April has been proclaimed as a worldwide Parkinson's Awareness Month for all to recognize the need for more research and help in dealing with the devastating effects of Parkinson's disease. Now, therefore, Gary Bassett, Mayor of the Village of Rhinebeck, do hereby proclaim April as Parkinson's Awareness Month in April of 2020. Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the resolution for Parkinson's Awareness Month.
Second.
For the month of April. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good. Last on this EV station communication. John, this is another subject you brought up. Would you like to talk about it?
Did you want to go through your spreadsheet first, Gary?
No, I was giving you the opportunity. It's up to you.
So, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Now mine is not pulling up everything.
I got it if you need it.
I have copies. Oh, there it goes. No,
Yeah,
hang on. There we go. I had to click on it twice. There's several charts that are out on the cloud. The
Yes.
first chart I would like to show you is the chart that's labeled EV energy chart. This is the actual energy consumed by the EV stations behind the municipal parking lot from October 2018 when they were put in and January 20th. And I'll get to the chart which then shows this information. So this is, you can see, as we've all expected, our EV usage is going up at that location. The next chart I want to present, it was on the cloud. We're not doing this just for the sake of putting in EV chargers. One of the things we are doing this and why NYSERDA gives us the grant money is because we're also reducing greenhouse gases. This is part of an environmental thing that we are trying to do. The Village of Rhinebeck is very supportive of the climate change crisis that is going on. And by having more EV charging stations and more EV cars, we are effectively drawing down the greenhouse gas emissions in our climate. So this chart represents on a month-by-month, over the same period of time, the greenhouse gas savings. Okay. Any questions on those two charts? Okay. The next chart, the next thing I want to show is both Karen and I met with, whoa, it came out in Russian. Let me go back. This is from Mira, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but anyways. Mira is the grants reviewer for the EV charging station number 1, which is grant number T00481. And when Karen and I met with her, our specific questions were, what is the status of our grant that we had out there? And effectively, how can, and what money is left for us to use in that grant, and how can that money be directed? She gave us a figure, which is in this note, that there is $2,379.12 remaining in the grant funds for T00481. And that confirmed with us that we can use this money to apply for our energy usage at the current stations, okay? So we have that money available for us to use. The last chart then is an analysis. And I want to go, let me just pull my notes up here so I don't forget something. Excuse me a second. Got lots of notes in here. The first column in this chart, and I apologize that not everyone see it, but obviously is the date. Starting at the same date, August 1st, going up to January 15th. And to coincide with the chart, column 2 represents the data on that energy chart that each of the 4 EV charging ports consumed from the grid for the purposes of charging the cars. All right, so you can see it started in August as 149.972 kilowatt hours, and in January it was 2,502, 611 kilowatt hours. The next chart is called peak demand. Our police station is a demand meter. And when I say demand meter, that means that ever since that police station has been put in place, it has been on a demand meter account. And a demand meter account means that it exceeds the limit of normal household usage, and therefore on a regular month, they rate this on a 15-minute interval of what our maximum usage was during that 15-minute interval, and then apply a demand rate to our account. Now, there's no correlation between energy used and peak demand. The meter does this measurement for us. It tells Central Hudson what that 15-minute interval was, and they set that demand meter. So what I then took was the EV demand in kilowatt hours, right? So basically, what we're trying to say is that the same conversion of the energy in kilowatt hours to try to convert that to a demand kilowatt hour rate. And the only way to do that is to take what we have for our EV stations. This gets kind of technical because what we're looking at is each one of those EV charging stations is rated at 32 amps, right? So if we have 4 stations running at 32 amps, we get a maximum kilowatt usage, right? Which comes up to 15,000, and I didn't write the number down, but it's that number, 32 amps times 240 times 4. So you can do the math. If you look at the same chart out on our portal, you can actually get an average utilization of our EV charging stations over this period of time. Because since there's no conversion to convert kilowatt hours to demand, working with utility, I said, how can you best do that? And they said, take what you can do is your maximum demand, which is the max kilowatt, which is the 32 times 240 times 4, times that times your average utilization, and come up with a ratio number. Okay? Again, I took that formula and applied it and then said, in a demand rate, that would be 0.5 kilowatts for the month of August. Demand. That's demand. Again, for the month of January, it would have been 0.31. Again, it's a ratio number of how much the police station is using versus how much the EV stations are using as compared to our average utilization. Any questions? I know. There's no easy way to get through this, right? So, and I wanted to be as accurate as totally possible. So the demand, and then what the utility company does give us in column E is the rate per kilowatt hour. They tell us how much we're paying for a kilowatt hour of energy. And it varies from month to month. So I put the exact number that they charge us for the rate per kilowatt hour into every month. All right? Now, they also give us on that same utility bill a demand rate, which they multiply times the max demand. And so for the month of August, it was $10.28 per kilowatt demand. Again. So now what I'm trying to show you is that we can take our actual energy consumption, which we know off the portal, we can establish based on our utilization how much the EV charging station used in terms of our demand rate. Again, this is not a number that we can derive or a number that they can give us. It's a formula based on average utilization, right? And then you take those two rates times the total kilowatt usage and come up with a cost per month. Sorry, it's a long process. So for the month of August, it cost us for consumption and demand $14.53. For the month of January, well, let's take a whole month of January is up to January 15th. The total charge for usage, total usage of all 4 workstations and the average utilization is $131.82. You add up that total cost of how much we've spent as a village to fund and pay for the EV charging stations, it comes up to $1,838.68.
And that's for how long a period?
That's from August 1st of 2018
Right, okay.
to January 15th of 2020.
18 months, Paul.
Okay? And that's, and then so we said, it cost us $1,838.
Yeah,
We, the village.
$100 a month.
To do this. Now, we have available funds, according to NYSERDA, of $2,379.12, which is in the memo that she sent us. So straight math now, you subtract the 2, we still have $540.44 left to spend in our grant for EV charging stations, number 1.
Yep. You now have a PhD in electric demand charge.
There's no easy way.
Wow.
There's no easy way to get through this. So that's my analysis, as detailed as I possibly can make it, by working with actual charges per kilowatt hour and demand rate, which is on our bill.
So I did something differently. We, Chrissy, and Karen track every month by department, including the police department, what is the Central Hudson bill, how many kilowatt hours have been used, and what's the price of the bill. So I start with August of 2018, and I say, well, that was the first bill that we had with EV usage. The bill was $551.76. Well, what was it a year before, comparable time, when we didn't have EV charging? And the answer is $460.53 for a difference of $91.23. And I won't walk you through every one of these, but you can pick any one. And what we see in December 2018, the bill was $459.87, but without the EVs a year earlier, it was $287. March of 2019, it was $714. The year before, without the EVs, it was $219. If I just used August 2018 through July of 2019, and I add up what were the bills, total bills, $7,501. What did it look like for the same 12 months without the EVs? $4,267. And I continue the exercise all the way out to January of 20. And page number 2 says, well, if the bills went up, I guess the usage went up. And so just repeating the same information except filling the cells now with, instead of the actual dollars, the actual kilowatts. And so we see, again, I'll just pick some randomly. February 2019, we used 4,070. 12 months earlier, same month, 1,784. Across the 12 months of August 18 through July 2019, 49,845 kilowatts with the EV stations. That was the first full year. The same previous 12 months, 27,546. So all I've done is look at the bill and say basically everything is doubled. And everything has doubled since we had the EV stations. So that's the analysis that I did. If I could just ask Gary about the email exchange, and thanks for sharing that. So we discussed this, I brought it up, as you said, on the last meeting, February the 11th, and then the following day you reached out to Willow, who directed you to Myra, and you reached out with more specifics, and Myra gets back to us, or gets back to you, Gary, with a CC to Willow on the 14th, just a few days later. The first thing in her email is there's a few issues with this contract. The first is that it's about $23,000 over budget. I'm going to assume that she didn't mean that.
Yeah.
We weren't.
Karen, would you like to explain this because you're a part of that?
We weren't 23,000 over budget, right?
Can you explain the 23,000?
I think the EV station number 2 is like although it's separate, it was like part of the first one. So it had to do with the EV station number 2. What we spent on the EV station number 2, they were applying it to EV station number 1 instead of taking the EV station, the $32,000 for the EV station number 2 and making it separate.
Yeah, so what happened here, Willow was covering for Mira, and during that course of that coverage when Mira was out, some numbers got exchanged internally with them that they had to go correct, and in our conversation she apologized and said,
good,
no,
okay.
Because now you can see, she sent an email, says that we have $2,379.12 left.
Yes, it wasn't logical.
So it's kind of obvious that we're not over budget.
Yeah.
And that we have money still.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that, but I mean, it starts off like you're 23,000 over budget. Her third paragraph, she says, hey, you had submitted a payment request for $1,020, but it hasn't been paid because we didn't provide hard copies, original signatures, self-certification forms, and canceled checks showing that we made the payments. And I think, Karen, you verified this for me. So far, we haven't gotten any money for electricity reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay.
We submitted what we asked them, and they asked us to withdraw that last submission and put one total one in, which we said,
Because
okay.
there was more than we thought was in there. So
they were holding back the $1,020 because, hey, you guys could actually ask for more.
Right.
Okay.
Well, they're giving us the opportunity to come in and ask for more.
It sounds like they were holding back 1,020 because we didn't have all the right signatures and we didn't have check stubs.
Well, at that point, we should have, I believe we did at that point. I mean, we were kind of feeding them the information that they needed as they were saying, we need this has to, the supplemental certification.
No, these things are naughty, yeah.
Has to be signed, so then we would sign it, scan it, send it, and then during that time, they're like, well, and then we put final on that, on that 1,000, we put that was a
Yeah,
final submission.
she has a problem with that,
And
yeah.
then she said, well, if there's 2,300, if there's 2,300 and what left, then why don't you do another one and make that one final, so you don't have this one final. So she didn't want it to have another one say final on it.
Okay, but I mean, the point is that since we had these installed August of 2018, up until today, we haven't gotten a dime to reimburse the electricity that's been used.
Right.
Okay.
And as soon as we get that 506, which I think, as soon as we get that, I think we will get that before the end of this fiscal year, the balance, the 506 that we can claim, then what I will do is when that comes in, I will do an expense reimbursement to the electric utility line item for the police department, which is where it should go.
Right, okay. So, I mean, it's good that we're talking about all this because we've gone a long window of time without getting any reimbursement, and now we're staged to get something.
Right,
So,
for sure.
So I'd just like to note that it's more than the $800 that you had.
Oh, yes,
said.
yeah.
So you were incorrect in the $800, that we actually have $2,379.12 that we can apply to that
That's
electric
good.
charge.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that.
Mr. Mayor,
And,
I'm going to excuse myself because I'm heading in for surgery tomorrow, so I apologize to the board, but I can't say too much longer.
all right.
Good luck. Good night.
And so this is paperwork that we normally would have gotten caught up on and we normally would have done. And this is process that follow and that we would have been submitting bills. We tried to submit an electric bill earlier and we got caught up into the turmoil of their accounting mechanism and our accounting mechanism.
Oh, I think that, their rejections were reasonable, that you have to have this filled out and this
So
signed.
the point is, I'd like to make another comment. You're comparing averages, which is fine if you have equal kind of things. But during the police station, that demand rate is set by climate conditions. It's set by their rate, and as you know, it changes constantly. They change the demand rate. They don't give us notification on how they're going to change it. We get billed regardless of what it is. You can see it went from 10.28 to $11.10 per kilowatt demand. We are at the mercy of the utility company and what they charge us. In addition, at the police station, we've made some changes. We also put in a new server that's running 24/7 over there with our new procedure for cameras that is consuming more power. It is a server. It consumes a server rate of power. We also moved John Ramondo over to the basement during the same period of time with his tools and power tools for his work that he's doing in Village Hall. So we've added more consumption to our police station in addition to adding consumption with our EV chargers, which we did. And now we're going for reimbursement.
This particular set of formulas, Gary, that you have provided for us to review, is this something that the state uses or this is something that Gary created?
The demand ratio, the state there is no, as I mentioned, there's no math that the state uses or utility uses to convert kilowatt hours to kilowatt demand, because the meter doesn't. So what they suggested is use a ratio. Come up with some sort of ratio. You come up with a ratio. So yes, I took our average utilization and came up with a ratio versus EV charging usage to demand and calculated the amount.
I wonder how other municipalities have done this. Do you think it looks like?
I can't imagine they did.
I don't think they've done it.
Whatever it is he did, I can't imagine they did.
Isn't it likely that they just said, here were the bills and?
Well, what's interesting is that when we put the first one in, we weren't including demand rate. When Karen and I submitted the first bill, we didn't think we could get reimbursed for demand. They are now telling us that's the whole part of the grant. You can get reimbursed for the demand. So now I said, wow, rather than going after just the electric consumption, which is $1,700, I want to go after some of the demand money. And I came up with a formula to say, here, this is how much I'm going to ask for demand money. I'm asking for extra money based on what they're allowing us to do. So I'm going after more.
It seems like we're actually going after less, because what would be wrong with since they told you, hey, you come up with the methodology, and then you're going to self-certify it, what would be wrong with the methodology that says, hey, here is what the bills were, and here's what they became?
Because we only have $2,379. So whatever we do, we're going to get that amount back.
Right.
As Karen mentioned, we are going to go forward and request a full $2,379.
Yeah, as we should, yes, that's good news, yeah. But what's wrong with, why not do it right now based on the pure billing data and the difference in kilowatts?
We could, but we're going to get there anyways. Either way, we're going to get there.
Well, why wouldn't we want it sooner than later? Particularly since we haven't gotten anything.
Karen and I decided to wait till the very end and do it, that's why. Karen and I just made a decision and said, listen, we can add this in and we'll go out and get it. It was our decision.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to contradict our decision, that's fine.
No,
It
don't
was
get
our decision
upset,
to make.
please, don't get upset.
I'm not upset.
It's a good conversation.
Yeah,
and
so we're going
no,
after
you're
the money.
getting, a little upset about it, but please don't.
All right, so is everybody okay with this, that we're going to apply? And we just closed?
My quick question is, when are we going to go to a fee basis? We exhaust this, then we do the...
I think we need to do that pretty
within
soon.
4 months or so, it
Yeah.
looks like, based on the...
To be able to,
Yeah,
to
we're
have
going
the
to exhaust
discussion.
that in maybe
Yeah.
4 months. so,
Right.
okay.
But this gives us an idea on what we have to deal with going forward
Right.
as well.
Okay.
So it's information that we can use when we have that discussion.
Yeah.
Right? And the consumption we pull right off the portal. Okay?
Yep.
Any other discussion on EV charging? Thank you. All right, moving forward. Minutes approval.
Oh, boy.
Minutes approval, 2/4/20, 2/11/20, 2/18/20, and 3/3/20. I'd like to make a motion to approve that set of minutes.
I did find just,
We'll go into discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's get a second.
sorry,
Okay,
so minor, but I
now
have.
discussion.
So on the February 12th, I keep doing this, I keep going out of the February 12th minutes, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sorry,
February 11th, you mean?
February 11th, yeah, what did I say, the 12th? And it's, we meant to use the word striping, and we used the word stripping. I knew that was going to get a kick.
Where is it? Just how far down is it? I'll make that correction.
Yeah, and we meant to say aisle, and we used aisle, I-S-L-E, and not A-I,
Oh, yes.
and that's it.
I'll make those
Yeah, I'm
corrections.
sorry, I thought I had highlighted them, but,
I may have missed it. It's been kind of busy.
and that's not going to come up in a spell check,
Yeah.
right, you know? That's it, that's all I had, Gary.
Okay. All right, all in favor of approving minutes for 2/4, 2/11, 2/18, and 3/3?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right. Next to last thing. I'd like to note that, as we do every month, I'd like to recognize our employees who have completed years of service. I'd first like to recognize water plant operator Justin Rhinebeck, 14 years as of March 2nd. Wastewater chief operator Brian Bacomo, 4 years as of March 7th. Wastewater operator Scott Rathjen, 4 years as of March 7th. Police officer Darren Bonder, 16 years as of March 15th. And our court clerk Tricia Yakalone, 13 years as of March 30th. Again, I congratulate all of our employees who have invested their time working to serve the village of Rhinebeck. Okay. There's correspondence that is on file at the clerk's office. And now I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the employment of the village clerk. Second.
Second.
Good night.
Good night, Jessa.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I'd like to make a motion to exit the executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed. I'd like to make a motion that we hire the employee to be named, since they haven't accepted, as our village clerk for $40,000 a year.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So good. All right, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.